Welcome back to another episode of Front Row Cinema, a movie podcast for movie lovers by movie lovers. I am your host, TJ Trimboli, and with me, as always, my co-host. I got a filthy little hobbitses in the house tonight, Mr. James O'Reilly.
Hey, if I've learned one thing from Return of the King, it's that you can't underestimate the hobbitses.
The filthy little hobbitses stealing my one ring, taking it all up to Mordor from me. How dare you? And each week we take a look at my 1,000 movies I've seen in theaters and we see how well it's aged, along with the hype surrounding the film, its box office analysis, and legacy in the film industry. So if you enjoy this kind of content, hit that sub button on YouTube, leave that 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's how you help the channel grow. Jim, what are we watching tonight?
We're watching not the penultimate Lord of the Rings movie because I've since learned what that word means since the last time I said it wrong. We're watching Lord of the Rings Return of the King.
Right? The final installment in the absolutely massive trilogy.
The
Oh, excuse me.
climactic conclusion.
The climactic conclusion. Yeah, that's I like the way you phrase that, my man. Yeah, the
Sounds like a
2000
really bad folk band. No, not maybe not folk. I don't know, like an 80s hair metal band maybe, but
yeah,
even
it
that's
sounds
like a
much
little
more like an
too.
80s hair metal band, climactic conclusion.
It's maybe like an 80s hair metal album.
Amazing. And we're doing the 2003 fantasy adventure, directed by Peter Jackson from a script by him, Fran Walsh, and Philip Boyens, and starring Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Viggo Mortensen, and every other person you can possibly think of. Now, Jim, we don't have a DVD cover to turn to this time because I have a box set and I don't have any log lines on my box set. So we're just going to have to turn our attention to the good old internet to give us a sweet little log line for the Lord of the Rings. But basically, you can dial it down to the conclusion to the Lord of the Rings, and it would sum it up pretty perfectly. But
Yeah,
we'll do
basically.
we'll do a little bit deeper than that in our log line, and it reads: Frodo, Sam, and Gollum make their final way toward Mount Doom to destroy the One Ring, unaware of Gollum's true intentions, while Gandalf, Aragorn, and their allies join forces against Sauron and his legions from Mordor. Bam. Short,
Yeah,
sweet, to
that's
the
that's
point.
about right.
Completely opposite of the movie, which is not short, sweet, and to the point. It is long, winding, and epic to get us there. Now, did you see
You're
this
right
movie in
about the
theaters?
long part.
Yes, very long indeed. You saw this in theaters, right?
Yeah, yeah. I saw this with three friends.
You had friends
Um,
before me. How dare you?
yeah, I did. Kids that lived around my block, we all went to see this. And the only memory I have is that at the end when the lady whose name I don't know cuts off the Nazgul's head and then kills the guy, I was like tweaking in my seat. I was so excited. And my friends were all like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like we are so loud. And I'm like, but did you see that? Like
And Jim, the answer to the question you're looking for is Eowyn is her name.
Eowyn, right, there you go.
Yes, Eowyn. Hot, thirsty Eowyn trying to get a piece of Viggo Mortensen that entire movie.
I think my one critique of the Lord of the Rings movies, way too many names that start with A. I can't keep track of everybody. Like there's so many.
I think that's just phonetically, it sounds like that to you because her name actually is with an E,
Yeah,
but
well,
then they
whatever
pronounce it
whatever letter
Eowyn.
you spell it with, I don't see it written down anywhere. I just hear people say it.
A lot of people lining up on top of each other in those movies. Fantasy is always plagued with issues of naming characters like very close to each other. Game of Thrones did that all the time in the books, where it was like six different characters all start with like Aegon, and it's like, dude, you got to stop this, man. Like,
Yeah, or like the familial relationships are such a big thing. Like eight different characters have the exact same name.
yeah,
Like,
like fantasy is a hard offender of that,
yeah,
and
I've
they
I've heard that like when you're writing things, you should try and use different starting letters for people, like so it gets less confusing. But of
uh,
course, in fantasy, there's like 100 million characters, and there's only 26 letters. So,
you're eventually gonna start repeating somewhere down the line. But
but
I guess
that's
the
their
battle,
problem, not mine.
yeah,
I
yeah.
still am not going to remember that name. Basically, I've already forgotten it.
And I mean, they only say her name like maybe a handful of times throughout the entire like two movies that she's in. So like you really got to be like paying attention to get it.
Yeah, right. And
Otherwise,
I
you'll completely
there was
miss
a
it.
lot of other things to pay attention to, I guess, because I did not remember.
Even like they do it with a bunch of it. Like I couldn't tell you what Carl Urban's character's name is in that in Lord of the Rings. I just always go, "Oh shit, Carl Urban, nice."
I want to say he's Faramir. Is
Nope,
that it?
nope, he
Was
is
he the one
not.
they were gonna light on fire?
That's Faramir, but that is not
Oh,
Carl Urban.
oh, gotcha. That's Faramir, not Carl
Yeah.
Urban. Got it.
Yeah. Couldn't tell you before. And I mean, I'm sure there's some Lord of the Rings purist out there right now listening that's going to like have a shit fit. Like, you telling me you don't know the leader of the Rohirrim right now, bro?
Oh, right. Okay, because Faramir was from Gondor.
Yeah.
He was the
Faramir is
steward's son, and
Boromir's.
Carl Urban was riding with Theoden, King of Rohan.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
There you go. We got there.
Theoden I know from the magic cards.
Yeah. Also, that's just such a badass name that like it's you instantly are like, yeah, I'm gonna remember that guy. Like Theoden King, like absolutely, I got it.
Yeah, and I mean, you put a TH in front of the A sound, all of a sudden I'm gonna remember it, because he's like the only one with that kind of name, you know?
Sticks a lot better. Yeah, tough naming in these movies, especially for when we were younger trying to watch these. I probably couldn't tell you one person's name outside of like Legolas and Aragorn back when I was a kid. Now we've talked a bunch about how this was part of a double feature for me back in the day. Me and Zach had to go to the movies. We had to see Return of the King. So that was absolutely going to get done. And then it became the first part in a double feature where the second movie after Return of the King, we needed a palate cleanser after something as grand as Return of the King. And we decided that the best way to cleanse our palate after that was to put ourselves through the Cat in the Hat.
Yeah, so the first mistake is, why did you think you needed a palate cleanser? Like, going into did you buy the tickets for both movies, or did you like get out of Lord of the Rings and like, you know what we should do? See Cat in the Hat.
I think it was a situation where our parents just didn't want us around for the day, and we're just going to watch movies all day until we have
And
to be home.
the
And the
three and a half
mistake,
hours of Lord of the Rings wasn't enough. They
you know,
needed more. They needed that extra 90 minutes.
we needed more. I think the mistake was in the order in which we decided to spend the day at the movies.
I mean, I don't know. I think it's all just a giant mistake. I don't know that you could watch those movies in the right order. I don't think it matters. I
It's
just like
true.
I couldn't even imagine like even watching this at home for this show, I was kind of like, man, this is like really epic. I kind of need a minute. This is
Yeah, and I feel like also Cat in the Hat beforehand probably would have been even worse because that probably would have put me in a sour mood then for Lord of the Rings. And it's a lot like you need to go. I need to go in like just ready to rock. And the last thing I need was Mike Myers ruining it for 90 minutes for me, and then be like, all right, now I got to sit through another movie. Like now I'm just mad.
Yeah, I will say that I think seeing Lord of the Rings first made Cat in the Hat have like no chance, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we probably barely paid attention to the Cat in the Hat because we were probably just still riding off the high of Return of the King. Like I couldn't tell you anything about seeing the Cat in the Hat other than I know we saw it because that was like a big double feature where our parents were just like, we don't want to see you until the lights come on the street. So it was like, all right, we know we did two movies, but we probably spent the Cat in the Hat just in the back of the theater talking about how sick Lord of the Rings was.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, and we'll talk more about this later, and we've already talked about it a little bit on other episodes, but like you went from seeing one of the most decorated Oscar Academy Award movies of all time to seeing The Cat and the Hat like within what I would imagine is like less than an hour, right? It's just like the
Probably.
you're on such crazy extreme opposites of the spectrum.
Yeah, it is absurd. I don't know why we thought it was a move to make. We probably would have been better serviced just sitting in the lobby of the movie theater talking about Lord of the Rings for 90 minutes and then just going home.
Yeah, or like going to like Pat's, get some pizza, you know what I mean? There are so many better things you could have done with
So
your time.
so many better options. And we chose, no, you know what? Mike Myers is gonna come through, right? Like let's go do it.
Yeah, I mean that's important context too. Like at the time, it wasn't unreasonable. Like if you were a fan of Austin Powers, it wasn't unreasonable to think that he would deliver something worth seeing.
It's only a few months before this in August that we got hit with Goldmember, right? Wasn't that 2003 or was that 2002?
I think it might have been 2003, but it feels like a while ago that we did that episode.
Right? I feel like it was '03, but I could be completely wrong there. Um, but yeah, but still, we're still riding off the high of the Austin Powers franchise and Goldmember. It stands to reason at that point in time, Cat in the Hat might perform, but not for us because we saw Cat in the Hat when Lord of the Rings came out, and at that point, it had been a few weeks of Cat in the Hat. It was enough for people to be like, "No, that movie is garbage. You should not be going to see that."
Yeah, Goldmember was
So,
2002, by the way, so it was
okay,
the
so it
year
was
before.
it was
But
2000 the year before, but
it's
still,
like even Goldmember though. Like say you saw Goldmember like immediately after Return of the King. Do you think I don't know that you would have enjoyed it as much. I really feel like it would have taken some of the wind out of its sails.
definitely probably would take some wind out of itself, but I think it would still at least get something out of it comparative to seeing what is often considered one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah.
Again, like
I
we did
mean,
the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. We're like, how do you follow
basically
up seeing the greatest movie ever made? We watched the worst movie ever made.
yeah, you basically went from listening to Aragon say, there may be a day when the courage of man fails, but it is not this day, to like 15 minutes later being like, yeah, it could probably be today, though. I mean, this, like, it's like, what were we saving if we were just going to be making this kind of stuff?
How do we
Like,
follow up a line that great? I got it. We're gonna watch The Cat in the Hat get a boner. Great, let's do it. And that was my experience going to see that movie. But hey, I added hard-earned dollars to the Lord of the Rings, like so many people, Jim. We've been waiting to get to a great box office day like this one for a long time. We've been suffering through a lot of mediocrity in the box office, and we're now about to hit some top of the line product. So let's cue it up. Let's dive into some box office numbers.
thing.
Numbers, dates, numbers, numbers, dates, array, dates, numbers. Show me the money.
We're gonna show you some fucking money.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've had a movie. Well, I guess we had one movie that definitely hit this milestone at some point. But I'm just gonna spoil the totals right now. We're gonna be looking at $1 billion movie here,
Right.
worldwide.
This at the time, the second movie to ever gross $1 billion after
Right, it would have been
Titanic.
this and Titanic, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, it opens against the $94 million budget, which I feel like is such important context for a lot of the movies we've been talking about recently.
like that. This movie cost less than The Cat in the Hat, Jim.
Right, right. And I mean, it costs more than most of the things we've been doing, but in terms of like bang for your buck, I think this movie is not even just in terms of success, I mean like in terms of what you're seeing on screen, like
Yeah,
it feels like this $94 million goes so much further than a lot of the money we've seen from other movies. Like SWAT comes to mind. That was an $80 million budget, which you saw on screen, but it just like not in a way not in the same way that Lord of the Rings puts this money on screen. It's just like amazing to see what you could do with that kind of money if you really have a good script and really good source material and a really good director.
crazy. That's absurd that they kept it under $100 million.
Correct, yeah. And it's gonna, like we said earlier, it's gonna win a bunch of Oscars. So, like most Oscar movies, it comes out in December. It's gonna open the weekend of December 19th to the 21st.
That's right in for the Christmas season, baby.
Not surprisingly, it's gonna open number one with $72.6 million. dollars.
Oh yeah, 72.6, good enough to put us in the number. We're in the top 10. It's in the number 7 spot, just behind Awesome Powers and Gold Members 73, and ahead of The Lost World's 72.1. And this is a franchise best for The Lord of the Rings. It beats out the Two Towers opening weekend of 62 and the Fellowship's 47.2.
Yeah, so 72.6, really good number. In
Huge.
context, it's even better, right? Because what we see with these holiday movies that we do if you're coming out the week before Christmas, a sizable part of your audience is going to be waiting until Christmas week or the week between Christmas and New Year's or New Year's to see the movie, right? Like there's going to be family around. This is like a big thing. This is the kind of thing you would probably go see with a bunch of people because it has a very wide audience, right? Um, Real quick though, before we move on to those later holiday weeks, other notable openings down in second place, huge gap, 11.5 million is second place this
Not
week.
even close.
Do you remember the movie Mona Lisa Smile?
Oh my God. Yeah, the Julia Roberts movie, like yeah. God.
Yeah, it's the
That's a
one with like Kirsten Dunst too, right? And they're all like
yeah.
the college girls who aren't really supposed to graduate college. They're just there to find husbands.
Jim, I couldn't tell you what the movie is about. I just know that I've seen it. I couldn't tell you
I don't
one
think
thing
I've
about
seen
it.
it, but I vaguely remember that that's the idea that like they're college kids and Julia Roberts is like a professor maybe,
Maybe
and
I
like
couldn't tell you.
Kirsten Dunst is like the leader of the "we're just here to get married" crew, and Julia Roberts is like, "But what if you got an education, like,
My God.
and did
Jesus.
something with it?" It's like that kind of movie, which honestly, premise-wise, I've seen worse.
Man,
But
what
yeah, so Lord
Oscar
of the
bait
Rings
that
though,
is.
going into the Christmas weekend, and actually, we're gonna call a bit of an audible here really quick because I feel like this is a good one.
Get up and play the line of the scrimmage. All right.
Yeah, we're changing the play. We're changing the play. Um, it's
Please
gonna
flick a
take me a
two.
second.
Please flick a
No, because
two.
the second weekend of Lord of the Rings is the 26th to the 28th.
Hmm.
And what I'm interested to see is how it does on the 24th and the 25th
Like
specifically.
there's single day totals on
Right,
those two
right.
days. Yeah, I know they are. I don't know what the amount is, but when I was looking at the thing, I did see that they said that it broke records for like totals on each of those days, which would make sense. Like this movie is the movie. Like every record it could beat, it beat. Like the Wednesday, it opened on a Wednesday. The Wednesday record, 34 million. It beat episode one's 5 day opening total of with 125.1. Like this movie just murdered.
Right, right. Oh yeah, that's actually yeah, I should have talked about this too. It's a 5-day weekend opening. So that opening weekend is really days 3, 4, and 5 when it pulls in 72 million. Do you want to take a stab at how much it pulls in on the Wednesday and Thursday of its release?
Well, I know the Wednesday was what 34. Yeah, when
34.5 basically.
yeah. So that's insane.
It
Uh,
pulls in like $51 million between those two
between the
days
2 days, yeah, crazy
before its $72 million opening.
opening, dude. It's
Uh, Then
nuts.
getting to the 24th and the 25th, to like one of those is kind of a half a holiday, and then the other one's like a full
Full
on the
on
big wig holiday. Pulls in another, it looks like 21 plus $1 million
over the 2 days.
for those 2 days, right?
Yeah, that's filthy.
And then so yeah, I mean like the run is sick. Where if you just looked at the weekends, it might seem like that's not as good as it really ought to be, right? This is like a big climactic movie for one of the biggest fantasy series, biggest movie trilogies of all time, right? But when you look at those like in between days, it's like, man, they're just raking in money. Like,
There's no slowing down. Like every day, they're just pulling money hand over fist.
right, right. And I mean, in the interest of no slowing down, weekend two, we've talked about this before. When a movie starts with a big number, the drop usually is a lot bigger, right? Because you have way further to fall. You can still have a pretty big drop and like have a good second weekend if you make a huge opening weekend. Lord of the Rings Return of the King doesn't want to hear any of that noise. It's like, I'm only going to drop 30.3%
Nuts.
after those huge 2 days of the 5 day, huge opening weekend, huge Christmas day. Its second weekend, it still only drops 30.3% down to 50.6 million.
Filthy. Just filthy.
Yeah, second place that week, a movie very close to my heart, Cheaper by the Dozen, comes in with
That's
27.6.
that's always so weird that they did that back then, where you were still getting movies coming out Like usually, like now today, all of the movies come out that weekend before Christmas, and then that's just what you ride through the holiday. So it's so weird to see back then they were like, no, no, we'll drop one in the in between, like that Friday in between. We'll drop cheaper by the dozen.
Yeah, I wonder too. I'm gonna check really quickly to see. I wonder too if that actually came out like released on Christmas Day, right? Because that's the thing they used to do. Like movies used to come out on Christmas
Oh yeah,
Day.
you get like some sort certain ones that literally that drop on Christmas.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it
they
was.
still
It
do
was the
that today.
opening day of Cheaper by the Dozen was Christmas,
It
the
was Christmas.
Thursday.
All right, that makes a lot more sense. Because I was gonna say, I was
Yeah,
like, if you decided to open it the Friday after, you're losing out on so much like holiday money right there.
right, right. And I mean that's another one. That's a pretty good like family movie,
Yeah,
right? For
that's a
people to see
perfect
on
family
Christmas.
movie to bring anyone who's like maybe a bit too young for Return of the King.
Right. And then also down in third place, also released on Christmas Day, Cold Mountain with 14.5 million.
Oh, that's a good movie. I love that movie.
There's one more notable opening here,
Oh boy,
which I'm just gonna verify really quickly. Also a Christmas Day release in 2003.
they're going hard on the Christmas Day releases this year.
We might have an early front runner for my next pick.
Oh God,
Do
let's
you
hear it.
remember the
Let's hear
Ben
it.
Affleck movie Paycheck?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. With Uma Thurman, Aaron Eckhart. It's a John Woo, right? Isn't it a John Woo movie?
I think so. It's
He
been so
like
long since I've seen it.
he like works for a company, right? And they like wipe he like wipes his memories
Yeah,
and but
it's
he leaves
about memory
himself
loss, and I think he's supposed to be like a tech kind of like genius or something like that.
yeah. And he leaves himself a bunch of clues to like regain his memory afterwards so that he could like take down the company.
Yeah, and
That's
just
right, because
just
he
really,
does work for them that at the end of the work they are gonna wipe his memory away so he won't remember working for the company.
right, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I
And he
think that
leaves
like goes
himself
awry.
clues.
Like
Wow, so that's
there's the
the
obvious like questions there, which is like, well, okay, but how do I remember I worked for the company and like get paid and stuff?
is that the pre-severance? Severance?
It's kind of like that. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
thinking the same thing.
God, what a movie.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
that was a movie.
early front runner for my pick because I
Oh boy.
remember seeing that movie and it is definitely as silly and it is a John Woo movie by the way.
Nice. Yeah. So you know it's at
It's
least pretty
definitely
decent.
as silly as most John Woo movies and I remember not thinking it was good necessarily, but I remember really enjoying myself.
Yeah. And it is fun to go back to those movies that kind of like filter right in the middle where it's like it's not horrible, but it's not great either, but it's entertaining.
Yeah,
It feels very much in line with like a SWAT where it's like, yeah, I remember that like I remember seeing the movie, I remember it being absurd. It'd be fun to revisit it because I feel like it could go either way.
definitely, yeah. But right now, let's move on to weekend three of Return of the King, right? Because this is another thing we've talked about a bunch. January is an absolute graveyard, and
I bet.
Lord of the Rings just like dominated Christmas. There's no movie that we've talked about that's come out that is, I think, even
Close.
remotely like competing with it, right? And that's not to say that some of these movies aren't doing well for what they are, but like it really appears to me that people just kind of like ducked out of the way of Lord of the Rings for the most
Yeah.
part. There's no like
Everybody
real box office fare here.
yeah, everybody knew that like this is Lord of the Rings' year. We're gonna that's it. We'll throw a few counter programming things in there, but for the most part, we're giving them the runway.
Yeah, and to that point, weekend three, there's no the first opening weekend I see here for January 2nd through the 4th is all the way down in 62nd place
Oh
called
boy,
Japanese Story. Opened in 5 theaters. Don't even know what that is, right?
jeez. Yeah, basically they
Um,
were like keep January open because no one's got it this year, guys.
right. Everything else has already been out. It's already been weighed and measured by Return of the King and found wanting, right? So
Nice. Good
Return of the
callback. Good
King,
callback.
yeah, is gonna take the number one spot again in weekend three. 44.3% drop down to 28.2 million.
Yeah, that's right.
Through its 3 weekends or 3 weeks plus the 2 extra days for the 5 day opening, we're already up to a domestic total of 290 million.
Nuts. After 21 days of release. Like that's
Right. And
crazy.
it's like, again, much better than most movies we've been doing, right?
Especially for back then. Like for back then, that's like stonkingly good.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those other movies we were just talking about, like Cheaper by the Dozen, still down here in second, 21.6. Its total gross hasn't even broken 100 yet. You know,
All right.
Cold Mountain hasn't even broken 50. Paycheck
Ooh,
is kind of floundering down here in fifth now. It's got 38.6 million. So like again, like just it's totally dominating the box office.
Old Mountain that's a curious release for against.
Well,
I mean, like I get
it's
it,
an it's
but
an
it's
Oscar
it's
movie,
yeah,
Cold
it's an
Mountain.
Oscar movie.
And
But
that might be one. I mean, I'd
I
be
would want that
interested to
movie.
see really quick what the budget of Cold Mountain was. I mean, pretty big, $79 million. That's a pretty sizable budget. But
Pretty
that's
good,
also
especially if it's
like
not touching 50 yet.
that's the kind of movie where you're not expecting it to have a big opening necessarily. You're putting it out there and you're trying to generate Oscar buzz, and then when it gets nominated for some awards, like then you're thinking you're gonna make some money box office wise.
Bad Cold
Similar to
Mountain.
Chicago, like if
Too
you
bad
look
Cold
at
Mountain
Cold
knew
Mountain's
they.
thing,
Yeah,
it's pulling in like low totals, but it's doing it for a while,
it's doing
right?
it for a
And like
bit. Yeah.
eventually they're gonna make their money back on this.
Too bad Cold Mountain's going to walk away empty this year. The most movies this year walking away empty.
Yeah, yeah. Cold Mountain, also very forgettable movie. I mean, like I watched it back then and thought it was pretty cool, and I couldn't tell you much about it these days.
I would recommend going back and giving it another watch because it's pretty freaking good.
Yeah. But all right, weekend four of Lord of the Rings keeps first place, 49.6% drop down to 14.2 million.
Oh yeah, baby, we're on a fucking run right now.
Yeah, we're starting to see some of the Oscar movies come back into theaters, like Big Fish just pulled back up into the top 10 from
Oh
12th
God,
place, which
they
again I think
nominated
isn't.
that. They nominated that for Oscars.
Yeah, yeah, that was an Oscar movie for sure. Yeah. Um it looks like they like really pulled it back, and then this week they like jacked up the number of theaters again. Because again, like once a movie starts getting nominated for things or gets buzz about being nominated, they throw it back in
Like
theaters, right? Because
throw it
they're
in.
like people will go see it now.
They're doing that right now. I'm finally able to see some of the nominated movies for this year that have just been impossible to see. They're finally showing up in theaters. And I'm like, thank you,
Yep.
fucking bastards.
Just another quick tip of the hat to the month of January before we move on. We have two openings here in the top 10.
Here we
Number
go.
one, My Baby's Daddy in fifth place.
Oh boy, yeah,
And then
that
the
sounds like a January
Mandy,
release.
I'm going off memory here, but I'm pretty sure the Mandy Moore vehicle, Chasing Liberty.
Oh yeah,
Which,
yep, that's a movie.
oh boy, maybe the most January movie of all time.
January coming in hard right now.
Weekend five, Lord of the Rings will finally be dethroned.
Oh man. All right. So it didn't have enough. I was curious because, the record obviously is Titanic, 15 weeks at number one. But just behind that, tied for second at 4 weeks, was How the Grinch Stole Christmas and The Fellowship of the Ring. So all eyes are right there to see if Return of the King could get that fiver, give itself a cemented second place. But looks like it's going to tie it with the other two now at 4 weeks apiece.
Yeah, I am very curious to ask if you have seen the movie that comes in number one this week.
Boy, all right, let's see.
Because
What is
Lord of
it?
the Ring, yeah, is down in third with 10.2 million. Is Along Came Polly an upcoming episode?
No, it is not.
No, it's another miss, dude.
I do enjoy that movie, but no, I did not see that one in theaters.
I am potentially willing to entertain the thought that I'm holding you to like very high standards, but I am just mad that you didn't see every good movie in 2003 and 2004. I want to go back in time and
He's
make
just
you go to all of them.
he's just like 13-year-old you is so goddamn inconsistent.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
want to become
this
friends
isn't
with
one
this
that I
guy.
saw in theaters. Along Came Polly, but I know I eventually ended up watching it and really liking it.
But yeah, the movie's a classic. Philip Seymour Hoffman is just amazing in that movie.
Yeah, it's got like one of the funniest things ever in the end when he plays the part of Jesus and Judas and
Yeah,
Jesus Christ Superstar, which like the logistics of are just like they don't make any sense. Um, so let's just ride Lord of the Rings out of the top 10, right? Because I have a feeling these
But
weeks
did
will come
well
up at
before
some point.
before we do that, I do want to know how much did Along Came Polly beat Return of the King by?
Oh, right, right, because you didn't see it. It pulled in 27.7 million for an opening weekend, which actually is pretty good for
Yeah,
January.
for Along Came Polly and for January, yeah, that's pretty good. And what did Return of the King pull that weekend?
10.2.
Okay. All right, yeah. So it was pretty much getting to that point where you just needed a movie to actually hit and it would beat it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right. It's getting to that point, but it's still like in its
It's still
50s.
good.
10.2 is like pretty legit. Like this is like if they can be pulling in like eight figures every weekend going forward, like they'll be happy with every time that happens, right? Because they've already
Absolutely.
jacked up so much money.
Absolutely.
Down in fourth place, another thing which I would hope and pray is one of our episodes, and I might be just forced to pick for the memes. Torque comes out this weekend.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No,
Do
Jim, I
you
did not
remember?
I did not see Torque in theaters. No, yeah, I remember Torque. That was the guy's favorite movie back in the
Yeah,
day.
I remember it more as like a movie we used to say one of our friends loved because he was like mechanical, which it was like I don't even think he ever saw it or cared about it. We were just like, "Hey, you like to fix bikes? You must like torque." Like it didn't make any sense. But that's the only thing I remember about that movie. I couldn't tell you who's in it. Like I'm pretty sure it's about cars, question mark. I don't know.
Motorcycles. I'm pretty sure Ice Cube.
Motorcycles,
I think
sure.
Ice Cube's in it. But I think that's about the most you could pull out of me. Yeah, there's
So
there's
I
a
don't know. Maybe we'll talk more about Torque one day. I
oh
feel like
God.
almost obligated.
Got it. Yeah, all right. In honor of the guy, we have to do Torque.
But we'll ride this out of the top 10, right? So weekend six, it comes in fifth with 6.7 million.
Right.
Weekend seven, it climbs back up to fourth with 5.3 million. I mean, even these
Nice.
numbers, dude, like it's already made so much money, and going forward, it's pulling in like these little chunks, and those add up over the course of 2 months, you know? Weekend eight, it pulls in 4.3 million down in seventh place. Weekend nine, 4.2
Woohoo.
down in eighth place.
Get to the double digits.
Weekend 10, it's in 10th place with 2.8 million.
Hell yeah.
Weekend weekend 11, it's in 11th place
Ooh.
with 2.2 million. But like I just
It's
want to
still
like
bringing
follow
it.
this. I know it's out of the top 10, but it's going to climb back into the top 10 for the weekends of March 5th through the 7th.
What?
It comes in
Really?
seventh place with 3.03 million. That's week 12. Week 13, it comes in ninth place. Again, this movie came out like the week before Christmas. We're in March, and it's still pulling top 10 numbers.
It's nuts.
With 2 million, and then finally for good, it drops out of the top 10 in weekend 14
So
with
technically it
1.4
spends
million.
so 12 weeks then, because there was that 1 week where it dipped out, but then jumped back in. So 12 weeks in the top 10.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
yeah, that is filthy good. And that's good enough to put us in the number three spot now, Jim. That's just behind well, not just behind Chicago's 16 weeks, but beat out Star Wars Episode One's 11 weeks. So that is huge for that movie.
Yeah, yeah, really good. Domestic, it finishes with 377 million. International, it pulls in $742 million, which like this might be the first one or maybe the best one so far, where we see what I think kind of becomes a trend, which is like what gets you over $1 billion is that you become like an international hit, right?
Yeah. If you can lock
Uh,
on worldwide, like you're in.
right. So yeah, and then that's a worldwide total of 1.1 bill. That's probably including like what I'm assuming are like multiple re-releases too, that total.
Yeah, the original total for its first run was 1.14, which easily puts us in the number two spot. Still lagging behind Titanic's massive 1.8, but clearly ahead of number three was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with 974 million. And then over on the
Yeah.
domestic side, that 377, all good enough to put us in the number four spot on our domestic list behind Spider-Man's 407 and ahead of the Two Towers 339.8. Yeah, that's
That's
insane that
crazy.
Spider-Man pulled
That Spider-Man finished
407
with
domestic.
407 domestic. That's pretty nuts. I
Uh,
can't believe I didn't think more about that when we did that episode.
Yeah, it's
That's
that's
a big
absolutely
number.
crazy that domestically it still outgrossed this, which became a $1 billion hit. But it does go to show that if you can latch on to those international audiences and you can make this not only a generational movie but a worldwide movie, you are much better lined up for that $1 billion hit.
Yeah.
Fucking just absolutely stellar.
But that's
And
enough about the numbers. I am dying to see what kind of person would give this movie a 1-star review.
all right, we'll turn our attention over to
I'm
our
sure
critics.
they exist. Or maybe they're a bot. I'm not sure. But
I don't know.
I'm
There
very
were there were a
interested to
couple
see.
in there, but it would be interesting to. Oh, it's always great when you get these movies that are universally lauded, to try and find your one stars because how can you complain when so many people are part of the zeitgeist? Because 94% from the critics, 86 from the audience, a 9.0 from IMDb. It's a record high one that we've seen so far, and an A plus cinema score. So across the board, this movie is universally loved. So
That
like
I might have to go back to the tape, but I'm pretty sure that's the first A plus cinema score we've ever seen.
I think we might have seen um one other one. It might have been Titanic, I think was up there also.
Yeah, I this
Uh
probably before we started like talking about the cinema scores.
yeah, but it's but definitely up there. But yeah. So you'd have to be something would have to be clearly wrong with you to not jive with Return of the King. I think we'll take our 10-star stance. You must not have gotten it.
Yeah, I am not gonna go that far until I hear what they have to say. All I will say right now is that I am very interested to see what they have to say.
There we go. All right, so we got our first one here. Now there was a bunch in there, but most of them, which I kind of like didn't go through, were a lot of people that were just like, this movie sucked because it didn't follow the book
There
exactly
was
to the
Tom
letter.
Bombadil wasn't in
Yeah,
it, so I
Tom
hate
Bombadil wasn't in it. Like, how do you
it.
make this movie and there's no scouring of the Shire? So like, I kind of avoided those ones because it's just like it's the movie, dude. It's not supposed to be a
Yeah,
shot for
nobody
shot.
cares what those people have to say.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't want to hear about your scouring of the Shire. I don't give a fuck. So we got this first person here. I cannot comprehend why this movie is considered good. An overacted, badly directed, self-important, repetitive, uninspired, shallow video game. Not a single character of death. What was the point? No imagination. Slow motion. I am sick of slow motion. Now that was that creative? No. Editing? What's with that ending? That was a 30-minute goodbye. Get on the boat already and die. How long does it take to die? 9 hours of movie and all he can do is shine a light in the dragon's eyes. Get out of here, Gandalf. Ooh, scary light. Don't recommend this for anyone. And those who liked it are just plain wrong.
Okay, so yeah, we got the classic I feel so strongly about this that I transcend the concept of opinions.
Yeah, like if you liked it, you're wrong. It's like, yeah, dude, the fucking universally lauded 11-time winning movie. Clearly everybody's in the wrong.
That's just the guy. He's a. I mean, they used to call these hipsters. I think I don't know what they call them these days. Where he's just contrarian. He's just
Too
like
cool for
everybody loves
school.
this movie, so I'm gonna latch on
Yeah,
to any stupid thing I can think
I have
of
to
and be
hate
like,
it.
"Ooh, there's a light!" Like,
Yeah. Mainstream, no thank you. Because also, like, I don't really remember any slow motion in the movie. Do you?
I'm not sure. I'm probably I would be surprised if there wasn't. I guess, but I think there was
Nothing
a
to the
lot of
point.
like. There was a lot of like not necessarily slow motion, but a lot of like I'm gonna hold the camera on Frodo's face for like a good 15 seconds before I do
Do
anything
anything
here, you
else.
know?
Yeah, yeah, I guess. It's just, I guess, having now, like, since this was before Zack Snyder, if someone mentions like an egregious use of slow motion, like, I think
Right.
of that. So it's like, and anything here, I'm like, that's not egregious. Like, I
Right.
don't see anything wrong with it.
Our 2025 palettes are so desensitized to the concept of slow motion that we're like, we don't even perceive it in this movie.
My eyes don't even pick it up anymore. All right, then we got another one here. This was the dullest film of the 65 films I have seen all year.
Jesus.
After 90 minutes, many people in the theater simply got up and walked out. The rest,
That's not true.
yeah, the
There's
rest,
no way that's true.
the rest were asleep. Sure, buddy. If people develop DVT through sitting through this, then Peter Jackson should watch out. Okay,
Wait,
what
if you
have
develop what?
DVT? I don't know what that is. What he's trying to say.
Okay,
Maybe
hold
look
on,
that up
keep
for me
going.
here,
I'm
Jim.
assuming it's some kind of like medical condition. So keep going. I'm
I
gonna
would
look
hope so
that up
too. But yeah,
while you
if
keep
people are
going.
developing DVT, Peter Jackson's got to watch out. What happened to Gollum in the effects department? Dreadful effects. I also find the actors totally unengaging and uncharismatic. In the end, I was willing Frodo to die because I got fed up of his constant whining. Lord of the Rings will never be remembered as fondly as the Star Wars trilogy, simply because it is
Oh,
unremarkable and unmemorable.
oh, I think we found one.
We got him. We got him.
Here we go, baby. What's the internet? You can't like raise up the things you like without tearing down the things that other people like. It's
Or
just
also, like,
not
you can't talk
possible.
about anything without somehow bringing it back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
they're
and just
obsessed.
again, Star Wars fans, and I struggle to use that like to put people in that group, but there you know what I mean.
Yes, I
You
know.
know what
I
I
know.
mean. I'm not
Yeah, I know
saying
where you're
like
going.
everybody who likes Star Wars, but there is like a stereotypical type of person who I would bet for 2+ years has just been stamping their feet and like having a hissy fit about the fact that The Lord of the Rings is incredibly popular and Star Wars is like taking a back seat for a little bit.
How dare they?
Right, right. Which, and this is a big thing. This happens in Clerks too, right? They have that argument when it's like all the like stupid nerds like high five at the end because like Star Wars was so much cooler, and it's like okay,
Like, God,
it's like
fucking.
I love the original Star Wars movies, but can we just be real for a second?
Like, I love the original Star Wars, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy is better than it. Like,
Yeah,
bar
yeah,
none.
like
And I don't
just
even think it's
because.
particularly close.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know that it's even worth comparing. It just, like, blows my mind that there's people who, like, this guy clearly has an axe to grind, and he clearly cares about. I mean, like, in the middle, he's like, it will never eclipse Star Wars, which nobody that's in their right mind would say that.
Like, I
Like,
don't think
nobody's
anyone
like,
was like attempting to do that or that was the intention. Like, it's just something that's real. Like, why can't it just be really good and stand on its own?
right, like, what does it have to do with Star
Star
Wars
Wars,
at all?
exactly. Yeah,
It's nothing. It's
it's
got
just
nothing to do with it.
he's just fucking Walter from the Big Lebowski. I was like, what was that shit about Star Wars, man? Like,
Right, right. And so like I don't know, it's another like time is a flat circle moment too, because so much of the discourse of movies online has turned into this, where like it's like fully acceptable and in a lot of places even encouraged to be like, well, that movie wasn't as good as this movie, so why would I like that movie? And it's like, I don't think that's really how it works.
I think you're missing the point there. But more importantly, did we get a ruling on what DVT is?
Yeah, so it's deep vein thrombosis, which
Like,
I'm gonna take a quick look at some symptoms and causes,
what
and
the
we'll make
fuck?
judgment on whether
All
this
right.
guy made any sense or not.
All right, so I guess we can join up in our class action lawsuit against Peter Jackson for our viewings back in 2003. Is it too late? The statute of limitations passed on that?
So like I don't know, it's a blood clot forms in one or more of the deep veins in the body, usually in the legs. So I think what he's trying to say is that like from
Your legs fell
sitting too
asleep?
much, like
Yeah.
because the movie is so long, people might develop deep vein thrombosis.
Hard stretch, guy. Hard
Yeah,
stretch.
seriously. I mean, like, I don't know. I saw Ben-Hur. Like, there's longer movies than Lord of the Rings, and there hasn't been like
Right.
an outbreak of deep vein thrombosis. So I think we're probably okay.
All right, good. So I don't have to join up the class action lawsuit then. Good. And then we got one. Oh, no, actually, one more 1 star. I got two more 1 stars here for you. This next person. This has to be the most overrated movie ever. What a disappointing year. First T3, then Matrix Revolutions, and now Return of the King. I guess we will never see a third movie better than the first two.
Wow, this guy's really getting to the heart of the issue.
Just great movies to loop it in with. Because I know
I,
when I think of Return of the King, I also instantly think Terminator 3.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
Matrix
I get
Revolution.
I get what that guy's going for because anytime I see a trilogy, I do tend to like try and think of it as a whole thing, you know? And
Yeah.
usually he's right. The third movies are not as good as the first two. I think this might be the one where it it's a trilogy and it's actually a good third movie. It's like enjoyable, you know? So I don't know. I disagree with that one.
And then we got one last one. And they write, this movie is overrated and frankly sucks. It has very few elements of a good film and was too long. Anyone can make a good movie in 4 hours. The trick is to stay under three. This movie had too many fronts. There were Frodo, Sam, Gollum, Aragorn, dead people, Merry, Rohirrim, and Gandalf, Pippin. The movie is good entertainment if you're willing to sit long enough. Lord of the Rings freaks have kept giving this movie a 10, making a mockery of the voting. No thought is actually being given during voting. And personally, I think people should just give it a 1 to counteract the false voting.
Oh my God, dude, time is a flat circle. There's literally nothing new about the internet. It's always been this way.
So, but just like the audacity to say that anyone can make a good movie in 4 hours. It's like,
Yeah, it's
all
like the
right,
craziest thing I've ever
yeah,
heard. There's maybe like
yeah,
three people on the planet who could make a good 4 hour movie.
yeah.
Like,
Like it's like, all
there's
right,
just
buddy,
no way.
I'm ready to watch their 4 hour movie. I'm like, I want to give them whatever money they need and I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, and like, am I crazy or is it way easier to make? And I'm not saying it's easy to do either. I think it's pretty hard to do either. Like, is it not way easier to make a 90-minute movie that's pretty enjoyable and good than a 4 hour one?
Would imagine, yeah, because you would think so. Because like, yeah, both are probably super hard, but with 90 minutes, you can, balls to the walls, speed run. Whereas like four hours is hard to keep someone
To keep my
entertained and
attention, yeah.
interested for 4 hours. Like that's a treat. That's a special kind of ability that not many people can do.
Yeah, I'd say it's like damn near impossible to keep
Yeah,
my attention for 4 hours,
like
especially these days.
yeah. The only one who can like consistently do it is like James Cameron.
Yeah, or I mean, like, I might say Scorsese. His movies are usually really long.
I would say it would depend on the movie
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
like Goodfellas, yeah, definitely. Like Killers of the Flower Moon, like yeah, definitely. The Irishman,
Goodfellas, though, not quite
fuck
four
no.
hours.
Yeah, Goodfellas is like 2.5, but still on the longer side. But like
Yeah,
if someone was like, "Yo, you want to watch The Irishman?" I'd be like, I'd rather pull my eyes out like with no Novocaine. Like fuck no.
yeah. I mean, fair enough. Yeah. I don't know that I love all of Scorsese's movies. I'm just saying he's a person who I think could do it,
But no,
and
absolutely.
probably has before.
I would bet on him more often than not to pull it
Right.
off.
I mean,
Yeah,
like Quentin Tarantino seems like a guy who would I would trust to make a 4 hour movie.
make one. Yeah, definitely.
And I'm like, I feel like I'm really running out of names. Like,
Yeah, it
I'm
goes
sure there's other people, but
Spielberg.
yeah, yeah, that's
We're
fair.
also like also now just naming like the best directors of all time. So it's like,
Right, but
yeah,
that's kind of the point. Yeah, like that's why it's so absurd for me to hear somebody say that anybody could make a good 4 hour
yeah,
movie. It's
yeah.
like
Like no one's
I
sitting there
don't
being
think
like Kevin Smith. Yeah, 4 hour movie could easily get it done.
yeah, for
Like I don't
starters,
know.
I don't think you could make a good 4 hour movie,
Yeah,
sir. I don't think you have any clue what decisions to make to keep me interested.
right. Especially and at that scale too. Like fuck out of here. And then we switch it on over to the 10 side. We got a couple babies here. So this first person writes, my verdict is clear. For 20 years since I saw Return of the Jedi, aged 7, movies are my life. I've been known to be very critical. So when I say this movie is the best I've ever seen, you could bet your bottom dollar it's true.
So great. 10-star reviews, man. Everybody always feels the need to
Amazing.
qualify. They're always like,
Amazing.
listen, I'm a tough critic, like,
Yeah,
or I'm a chick who likes these kinds of movies, but this movie was good. It's so funny to me.
it's so rarely about anything in the movie and just their thoughts on why they think it's 10. Like it's never
Yeah,
like this movie is a 10 because of like the sweeping score or this and this. It's like no, it's like I've seen a lot of movies, so I know a great one. Like it's like,
right,
oh
right,
yeah,
right.
that does nothing for me, guy. Like
Right. And it just cracks me up like people it's there's like something here because it happens in all of them. People always need to feel like they have to they feel like they have to qualify it somehow
they've
to
got to
like put it in
validate.
perspective why this 10 is like the 10 of 10s. It's
Yeah,
so funny to me.
they've got to validate their opinion. We're all selfish people, Jim. We need to feel that validation. It's just how it has to happen. And then this next 10-star person, another great one. This movie is awesome. It's some of the best I've ever seen. I've never seen a movie as good as this. I couldn't keep my tears back, and so could the 4,000 others in the cinema. What? What theater did you go to
That's got to be a typo. That's got to
that
be a
had
typo. They
4,000
saw it.
people?
They saw it at like I'm
It's sort of
trying
like
to think of
Wembley
like a
Stadium.
4,000 seat theater. Yeah, they saw it at like what's that one venue we used to go to in like New York?
But which one?
Like
The
Terminal
the
5.
Terminal
I
5.
don't even think Terminal 5 can fit 4,000 people though. I don't know.
It's sort of PlayStation Theater.
Yeah, PlayStation theater.
It's like Jesus, man. There's a lot of people to watch a movie with. Great. And then what else we got? We got another where we go?
I still, you know what I can't get over? The guy
What?
who said half of the people got up and left. That's such a bold-faced
Yeah,
lie.
it's insane. It's like that, like how do you know they didn't just go to the bathroom or go to get popcorn, bro? It's like a long movie. Like it's like everyone else was asleep. It's like, yeah, sure, bro. Like yeah,
Like
it's totally.
in the what had to be a sold out theater, you're telling me like 50 people, half of the people in that room were so incensed with the concept and movie Lord of the Rings Return of the King that they had to leave
They just
for
had to
it.
dip. They were like, I can't do it.
Bold-faced lie.
Absolute, great on that guy's part. Our next one we got here. I just came home from the midnight premiere and I was absolutely stunned. This is my generation's Star Wars, but 10 times better. The acting is superb. More flesh is added to all the characters, especially Gollum. I can only wait until the time comes when my future son comes to sit in my lap and asks me what it was like to be there, experiencing the premiere. And I'll say, well, son, it wasn't bad at all.
It was
Like, after all that buildup about his future son, he's just gonna go, it wasn't bad at all.
yeah, 10 points to Gryffindor for that insane hypothetical.
Like, this movie was so good. It had him thinking about decades in the future
like
when his son might possibly come ask him about not the movie, but going to see the movie on its opening night.
right, he's at least up to like the third part of a back and forth in this like totally fictional event that may or may not ever happen.
Right?
Like,
When more often than not, his future son probably won't give two shits about any of the things
right, right.
you
He's
experienced.
probably gonna be watching like his future son is probably online right now shitting on the Rings of Power. Like as we
Yeah,
speak.
he's like kind of this fucking woke nonsense. Like, he's like, what does my
Yeah,
son
right,
become?
exactly.
Oh, that was a glorious one. And then we got one last one here. The third film was the one they call The Return of the King, and by the end of it, I had forgotten about the other two. My expectations were extremely high given how much I loved the first two, and this managed to go beyond it all. What a beautiful movie from start to end. Everything is better. The acting, the music, the special effects. It's so good at times, it's surreal. The camera shots, the great lines, the epic battles. You just on and on until you feel like you're floating. I can't believe I sat in a theater for 13 hours, but then again, I spent it watching my all time favorite movie, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Years from now, I'll be happily watching this one with my kids, showing them what a real movie of my day was all about.
Yeah, oh yeah. It
Oh,
is. I mean, that's interesting that we saw that twice.
twice, yeah. And I saw those when I was looking at the reviews back to back also. It's like two dudes were just like, my future kids are gonna know what I was there, Aslan, when the text was written. You don't know
Yeah.
what it was like.
I mean, what I will say, they were still doing better things with their time than watching Cat in the Hat. So, I mean, who's the real clown here? Like,
Fair, fair. All right, all right, all right.
they were, it just puts it into even greater perspective, I think. Like, people are at home thinking about, like, their lineage, like, after they see Return of the King. They're like, no, I gotta think about, like, the future generations right now. Like,
They're thinking about the family tree, and I'm like, nah,
yeah.
Cat in the Hat. Oh my god! All right, so now I'll turn it over to you, Jim. Did this movie hit the highs of making you think about your future spawn, or was this absolute dribble? Let's hear where the movie lies for you.
I mean, it's somewhere in between absolute dribble and me, like, thinking about how I'm gonna raise my son. Like I didn't quite get to that point. Although I maybe have watching this at times in the past. I can't say for sure. I didn't this time. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's really good, right? It's really, really, really good. And what I was trying to focus on when I watched it through this time is how it compared to the first movie and the second movie because we both watched those pretty recently. Like we watched them to kind of analyze them and talk about them. And I feel like I found interesting things about those two when we went over them, right? Like I really thought about how they were standalone movies. So, and I say this all the time on this show. I don't care what your series is, how many movies it is. I'm a very much a what have you done for me lately kind of person. Like what's going on in this movie that I can latch onto and that I can turn this on at any time and it can stand on its own, right? So this time around I was really trying to focus on that and I'm interested to see what you think that was in this movie because I think it gets there, but maybe not quite as well as movies 1 and 2 did.
Well, I think the third one, especially in on a line like this where this is the finale, it is a hard juggling act because you're not only tying up everything else that's come before it, but you also have to make it seem like this could also be one that could stand on its own, that you can just throw
Right.
the Return of the King on and follow it from start to finish. There's just so much juggling to do in
Yeah.
this movie. And I think for the most part, it does get there. Like, I do agree that I don't think it hits quite the watermark in terms of like realizing are the theme of what that particular movie is about as well as the other ones do. But I
Yeah.
do think this movie complements very well as a finish to the themes of the other movies. We talked a lot in Fellowship where, it's kind of like Frodo is coming to the realization of like having to leave behind the world in which he embodied and become a man and realize that he has to go on this journey alone.
Right.
And then
Right.
in pretty much in that movie also they're learning that they have to trust in an individual that they wouldn't normally think they'd have to trust into to see the job done. And then that carries over into the second one where we're learning like how do you hold on when everything seems at its most desperate, where
Yep.
like there's no end in sight. There doesn't seem like any type of way in which we can win this. How do you hold on to that hope? And then for this movie, it kind of feels like they're showing the ability of these characters fully entrenching themselves in that idea of hope and seeing that hope come to fruition.
Yeah, see, what I would say, and this is maybe the first time I've thought about it watching this movie, and it's because of the context that we were putting it in doing this show. So thank you for getting me to do this show because it's cool to watch this movie through that lens. I feel like if the first movie is about like Frodo kind of needs to go on his own, and the second movie is about like holding out hope against all odds, this is the movie where the theme to me is, but you can't survive with hope alone. You know what I mean? Like you actually need to like do things. You need to sacrifice. You need to like put yourself on the line when all the chips are down, kind of a
Mm.
thing. Because like in the second one, it's not that people aren't doing that, but it feels very much like we're in a holding pattern on the actual like finishing things off, right? And so you hope and you hope and you hope, and then like people come and save you at the end in Helm's Deep, right? In this one, it's like, no, you need to get involved, bro. You can't be sitting around hoping. You gotta like pick Frodo up and carry him up the fucking mountain. You know, like you gotta, if you're Marion, you gotta like tell everybody who's telling you you can't and be like, well, fuck you, I gotta try. You know, like I gotta do something here,
It needs to
even
be
if it
the
means I'm
agent.
gonna die.
Yeah, there needs to be the agency. I think that might be, and I see all that in there. I think where maybe it doesn't hit quite as high, and I guess this pretty much is probably going to be up to personal, preference for people.
Hmm.
I feel like some main characters have to die.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. If that's
Like
kind of the point, like somebody's gotta like really make the old, like somebody's gotta kick the bucket doing it, right?
nobody major in our like fellowship dies without
Yeah.
them making the choice. Like Frodo does at the end, but that's because he's like, I can't go back to my life here. Like I'm going to the Undying Lands with them.
Well, but all right. So, question though, because
Yeah.
this is something I've never understood about Lord of the Rings, and I did not read the books. Probably never will read these books because I've seen the movie so many times at this point, and it feels like I made it about like 10 pages into the first one, and I was like halfway through Bilbo Baggins's like family history, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I
Dude,
can do this.
I did the same thing. I was like, this is too dense. I can't.
Yeah, it's way too much. A lot of talking during the
Yeah.
routine,
Way,
right?
way too much going on.
But are the like is he dying when he goes to that place? Because I thought the whole idea was that was like you go there and then you live forever. Like you have to leave the world. Like I get how it's a metaphor for dying, I suppose, but he doesn't actually literally die in The Lord of the Rings, right?
I don't know because they don't really. I guess they kind of leave it up for interpretation in the movie. And like you, I've never read the book, so I don't know like if that's an actual thing. Because like the place that they're going to is the same place that Gandalf kind of describes to Merry at that one point of like what the next journey after death is. So like I always assume that like because like Gandalf
Oh
can't
yeah.
hang around. Like Gandalf died. Like and they brought him back as the White Wizard to help see shit done, but like now's his time to go back. So I always assumed Frodo was going back with him to the next journey because nothing in his life anymore could have that same type of meaning in the Shire after what he went through. Like the ring took too much from him. So he is choosing to go
Yeah.
with them.
Well, to me, the idea is that he's like earned the rest, I suppose. He doesn't need to like he's gonna go to this place that's like paradise, and which I understand is kind of like it's a metaphor for heaven. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing people dream about we go, you know?
Yeah.
But I always thought, like, wasn't that what Elrond is angry about with his daughter and Aragorn is that she can't go to this place? And like I thought the idea is they go there and the elves just live for eternity there. Like that
I
if they go there they can't die, but if they stay they will eventually.
I don't know. It's not inherently clear with it. Like they don't do a lot of exposition on it in the
Yeah,
movie. So without reading the books, I couldn't really say one way or the other than just like what we interpret through what they give us in the movie.
that's fair, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess
I
it's
could
just
see
we've
that.
looked at it differently,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I could see that either way, like whether it is that like where the spot that they're going to is technically what's like considered heaven for them, or like, or if it's just like this land that the elves have and they're like, this is where we fucking hang out, bro. Like you guys ain't allowed. Like,
Yeah, because I'm going off of watching it for this show, but I feel like in the first one, that's what Elrond's talking about. He's like, "Nah,
yeah,
dude, the elves are dipping, and we're going to
yeah,
this other place." Like, because that's kind of like part of the setup, right? Is
yeah.
they're like,
But then
"Nah, we
like,
fought Sauron. We're done with that shit."
but then it opens up a whole other bunch of questions because it's like, can anyone like just sail there? Like, how do you guys like get there? Like, and
No,
what
I
is it
think,
about there that only the elves can live forever? Like, will Frodo now live forever there too, or is he just going like
yeah,
it?
I'm not sure, but
It
I think you can only get there through the elves. Like, the elves were kind of like, "All right, Frodo, you're cool. Like,
he's like, you're
Bilbo,
cool,
you're
you're
cool.
cool,
Like,
fuck you, you're
Gandalf, you're
cool.
cool. You guys can come. Everybody else, we'll see you later." Like,
Yeah, so I don't know without really knowing too deep into the lore. I couldn't say one way or the other. But
yeah.
I can see your interpretation. I can see mine. I really I don't have a dog in the fight because I don't understand it just like the same as you.
Yeah, but to me it makes your point better when you see it my way, which is like they don't actually die. They survive. Like they go potentially live for all eternity, you know, like in some elven paradise, I guess. I don't know. Um so yeah, but like I'm with you. Like it feels like people do make great sacrifices in this movie, but nobody quite makes like the ultimate sacrifice. They
Like
try
nobody
to, I
does.
guess. They,
Yeah. Like the one character we lose is Theoden.
yeah.
But like he can. He's expendable. He's not like one of the big main guys. Like,
Right, you're talking about like Aragon
yeah,
or Gimli or Legolas or one
yeah.
of the
Which
hobbits,
is
like
not saying like,
somebody's
yeah, which
gotta.
is not saying I want it to be like suddenly like a Game of Thrones type thing where they're like offing everybody left and right. But like at least one or two people to like heighten the momentous epicness of this, I feel like should die or make that sacrifice. Like I don't expect it to be Aragon because we need the king to be back. Like the movie's called Return of the King. Like he ain't
Yeah.
going. But
I
like,
mean, what I would say is that every time I've watched this movie, I've never actually thought that. You know what I mean? Like I've never left it being like, man, you know what would have made this a little bit better if like that guy just died.
yeah,
Like,
no, 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 and I don't want you to think that like I'm also sitting there thinking that, but within the context of the theme that we're talking here, where we got to see that agency and people need to be willing to put in the work and make that choice. It feels like it might have maybe heightened that theme a little bit better if
yeah,
one of the
maybe.
characters made that agency to sacrifice themselves to trust in Frodo to get this job done.
Yeah, but I think there's some nuance to it that maybe I missed in my first pass at trying to explain this, which is like it's not just that you need to sacrifice to make things happen, it's that the unlikeliest of people like may be willing to make that sacrifice. And the idea is that the fact that they're willing means more than any other measuring stick you can use. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they have the heart to do it and they're committed and as the one lady says, he has just as much reason to go to war as you, like or whatever
Don't
she says,
don't
something
down his
like
heart,
that.
only the reach of his arm.
Yeah, right. Like it's like he's measuring the wrong way is I think one of the main points of this movie. Like it doesn't matter the reach of his arm. It matters what he's willing to sacrifice. Like that's what's going to get us over the top. And we need every person like that we can. So, I don't know, but again, like that's kind of what I took away from it this time, but I do think it's lacking the kind of central drive that the first movie has where Frodo's clearly your main character and he's clearly learning a very specific lesson throughout the movie, and then at the end he has learned it, right? And then same thing in the second one. I think that exists for all the reasons we talked about in that episode. It's not quite as strong in this one, and I think that's mostly because, like you said earlier, it's got a lot of plot work. It has to wrap up a lot. Like a
It's
lot of
got
things just like literally need to happen for the story to end.
it's got to juggle so much that it becomes less of the theme heavy and more just plot heavy because we're wrapping everything up. Like to
Yeah.
them, this movie is more that we've put in the goodwill with the other movies on these themes and everything that now is we're just cementing them. There's no like we're not building a new one. We're not doing we're just culminating everything.
Right.
So your
Yeah,
mileage kind of varies in terms, when you get to a movie like that.
sure.
I think for the most part though, they knock it out of the park. I think the biggest detriment for me in this movie. And it's not so much something that ruins or, takes away from the experience of the movie at all to me. It's just something that I think like personally, I just like I could do without is the Ghost Army. I I there's just every time I watch it and I don't know like how to put like my finger on it. But like the Ghost Army stuff just does nothing for me. Like it always to me felt more like just like a cheap cop out to have them tip the scales and less like a like good plot point in the movie. And I think I pinpointed it on this viewing. What does
Okay.
it for me is
Okay.
that we're the third movie in and we're only hearing about the Ghost Army right when they're camped outside of it. And they're like, hey, we could use a pretty good Ghost Army right about now. Like, couldn't we? Like, there was no setup about this thing that happened to these people in anything until right when they got there. And then somebody explains what happened and why they like haunt in there now. And then like it
Yeah.
happens. So like I think what kills it more for me is that it doesn't feel like they put in enough of the legwork to like hype up their existence in this world. They just kind of like show up there at the moment when it's needed and then they go in and get them.
Yeah. So I definitely get where you're coming from. I think I disagree for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
Like I don't disagree that it does come out of nowhere. Like that's true. It does just like in the like with about 2 hours left in this movie, they're like, by the way, there's a ghost army, and that maybe will help later on. Like, um, so like it definitely happens, but and this is just preference, I think. This is just taste, and this is something I've said on this show a lot. If in the Fellowship of the Ring or the Two Towers you mention that ghost army in any kind of meaningful way and they don't pay off till the Return of the King, I am so pissed. Like, I am so pissed. And I think it makes those first two movies worse. Like, the first two movies, in my eyes, are about as close to perfect as movies can be, you know? And if you were throwing in like, but what about the Ghost Army and the Fellowship? Like, and it was just so that later on it didn't feel cheap, I'd be so mad. Like,
Well, all right. So not specifically be like, hey, like I'm not saying like in Fellowship or Two Towers, somebody should be like, hey, there's a ghost army out there.
yeah,
But
why? But how do they come up then? Like, what context do I
maybe
learn about this Ghost Army?
maybe drip the lore somewhere, not about the ghost army, but about like who they were beforehand. Like maybe
Uh,
be like there was these people that like fell on a battlefield like and lost their honor, because a big part of the second one is talking about how there's no honor amongst men anymore. And
yeah,
there probably is somewhere in there to slip it in about like
yeah.
something
I
with
mean,
Gondor and losing the king, how like there was this group of people that fell and lost their honor, and it's rumored that they're, you know, like whatever. And then in the
yeah,
third
because
one, when he shows up there,
the whole
it's like,
Gondor helping Rohan thing is like a big part of the second one. Like, will they, won't they? You know.
yeah. So like
And then
there's a
like
way
I
for
could
them to
see
mention.
maybe if you bring it up in the opening of the first movie, question mark, when they're like talking all about that. But even then, it's like that part's so perfect. I don't
Oh, no,
necessarily
I
need
don't
you to
think you
talk
need it.
about like the mountain men who didn't come to
Yeah.
help, you know?
No, you don't. I don't think you need it in the first one, but I definitely think there's a way to at least seed the idea in the second one. So that
Yeah.
way, when we get into the third one and they show up there, it's more just like, oh shit, yeah, like that's the army that like didn't come to help them back, like that they talked about, just so that
Yeah.
it's something
I
supplanted
guess
there, so it doesn't feel like it's because it's literally like they roll up to the camp. For some reason, they set the camp up right in front of the area where that is, and then they're like,
right.
"What's that?" And they're like, "Let me tell you about that." It's
I
like,
did I did think that exact thing when I was watching it this time where I was like, man, they're really close to that chasm. Like they didn't even have to leave camp to go up
yeah.
there. Like
Like they just stalk through camp and go into there, and everyone's like, "What? Where's he going? He's going in the chasm." No.
yeah, but I do like it does come out of nowhere, but part of the reason I can forgive it, I guess, is because of the things you're saying for me though, where like this whole idea that like man sticking together and like man uniting in common purpose is a thing that we don't always do, and it's like to our detriment, right? Like
Yeah.
because that's a theme of all the movies, I'm much more forgiving when they're like, yeah, and here's another example of a time when dudes were like cowards and just didn't live up to what they said they would do. And like it totally like boned those other humans, you know, like so it like it's out of nowhere in a sense, but at the same time it's also like what these last two movies are about, right? Like so to me it kind of makes sense that it's there. Like they've established enough of the world for me to be like, yeah, that's a thing that could happen. Sure, yeah. Like people
Yeah.
like don't show up when they were supposed to help all the time in Middle Earth.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I guess it's I can see why it's there. Like, and like I said, it's more of like a nitpick and a personal preference more so than it is like something that like ruins the movie for me.
Yeah.
Um, and then it also is a little interesting later that they still have to fight at the Black Gate, but they were just like, I hold your oath fulfilled. See you later. It was like maybe we probably should have kept them around for a little bit longer. Like
Yeah,
maybe,
Gimli was on to something
yeah,
there. Yeah.
maybe
Like
like, well, Gimli said it in a horrible way that made it seem like you were never going to release them. But like maybe
right,
we wait
right.
until Sauron's defeated before being like, all right, you guys can check out now. We'll see you later.
I think it was important though because I think it does two things. Like it accomplishes two things. It makes Aragon look like the fucking man for one thing, where he was like, "Look, you guys fulfilled your oath. all that, like, saving the world's my problem. You did your part. Thank you for that. Now I'm gonna go save the world. You know, it. And then in terms of like the movie, I think they're just too OP to bring to the Black Gate. Like I don't like I'm not sweating it nearly as hard because I'm just like, yeah, dude, the Ghost Army is just gonna like swarm over the hill and kill everybody. Who cares? Like it's like
I much prefer your first point that I think
they could
stands a lot
just
better. Is
march Frodo to Mordor themselves. Who needs
yeah.
them? You know, like who
Well,
needs
that's
anything else?
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like at that point, why I think I dislike the ghosts a little bit much because then it's like yeah, I'm with your first point that I like that like Aragorn would be like, no, I gotta, I'm gonna hold you to my oath. I am the king that everybody, that was promised to return. I will restore the trust. So like, I'm gonna give you that oath. But then it
Yeah,
also and
it's
that works in that regard. But then it also feels a little bit like a cop out because you're like, yeah, they're too OP to be there,
right.
so we
They're
gotta get them
just
out
this
of the
movie's
way.
over if this Ghost
Yeah,
Army's just
yeah.
hanging out until we
Because we
save the
saw
world.
like
Yeah.
5 minutes earlier, we saw this ghost army just like eat like 80 Oliphants, like
Right, right. They
like it was
wiped like
nothing.
thousands of orcs out in the blink of an eye, you know?
It was like we
But
gotta
then
get
the
them off the
other
map.
the other reason I think it makes sense is because I think their oath was to defend that specific city.
Just to protect
Like
Minas
that's like the
Tirith.
capital where Aragon gets crowned at the end is like whatever that city is called. I don't know. Don't
Yeah.
don't kill me, nerds. I'm
Minas
sorry.
Tirith. Fall back to the keep.
But that was the specific deal was when the
Yeah.
city was in trouble and they were called on, they were supposed to come. And so they fulfilled it, like
Yeah.
they
Yeah, no,
weren't they weren't like, yeah, and if you guys want to march on Mordor, we'll be
yeah.
there.
Like, bro, I need you at the Black Gate now. Like, why don't you come help us in a pinch?
Yeah. It's also the other part I didn't understand about that is like if if Aragon didn't release them from their oath and he was like, yeah, all right, now I need you to march to the Black Gate, would they just like have to do it? Like I don't understand. Like
I don't know. Yeah, right. Because at that point, you could just forsake the oath again and go back to the chasm.
yeah, right. I guess like they theoretically needed him to be like the curse is lifted.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
don't know.
The impetus is that they want the curse lifted so they probably would obey. But he'd probably be very strongly like, listen, I'm gonna come to the Black Gate, but that's it.
Yeah.
After that, I
And
want
all
those
that
oaths fulfilled.
I feel like we've missed kind of some parts of this because we've talked about it. It's a lot of the same from movie one and movie two, but like obviously like the movie's beautiful, like the shots are insane, like
It looks incredible.
the
The
battles are fucking nuts.
Some of the shots when Sam and Frodo are in Mordor look like a painting. They are
Yeah, they're amazing.
fucking gorgeous.
They're
Like, and
amazing.
it's insane that it's like 20 something years later and these movies look immaculate, like
Yeah.
way better than a lot of the stuff we get today.
And I'm curious like how much they've worked on them for the versions that we watch on streaming. You know what I mean? Because
Uh,
I wouldn't put it past movie
Listen,
studios to do like a
the
finishing touch here or there.
Jim, speak for yourself. The versions that you watch on streaming,
Yeah, that's fair. I watch on
I'm
streaming, that's
watching.
fair.
I watched my VHS copy. Thank you very much.
So I think there is a little bit of that, but I also do think it holds up just like
Yeah,
of its own merit.
yeah. I
Like
think it just
some
holds
like
up
you said,
immaculately because
and
because
not even just the shots of them in, is it called Mount Doom? Is that what
Mount
it is?
Doom.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mount Doom.
Inside the volcano that is Mount Doom, like those shots are amazing, but all of the shots of them in this movie are really great.
Well, because he uses like what you should be doing with film, which is using all of the tools at your disposal. Yeah, we can CGI it, but you know what looks better? If we make a miniature of Minas Tirith so that like we have this huge epic wide shot of it and it looks massive, but it's done on such a small scale and it's great trickery. Like that's
Yeah.
what movies should be. Like I always hate when I see like these fantastical things that you see today and they're like, well, we got to CGI it. It's like, really? Because
Yeah.
the Lord of the Rings didn't, and it still looks
I don't
fucking great.
I don't know if I would say it's what movies should be. I don't know that I want to make such a definitive statement about it, but what I will say is that no matter what people are using, very few of them do it as well as Peter Jackson does in these three movies. You know what I mean? Like it's
Like
like
it should be a blend where like you can't discern the difference between what CGI and what could be like a miniature or a practical effect. And
That's a
that's
pretty good measuring stick for
yeah,
if you did it successfully, I would say.
yeah,
If it's like not noticeable, I think that, and you
yeah,
tricked my eye,
yep,
then you succeeded.
yep. And somewhere along the line, they forgot about doing that and kind of just like green screen the shit out of everything now. But thankfully, there's still a few out there that give us the goods.
Yeah, and
OG
one
the
more thing,
yeah,
much like in Harry Potter, how I talked about for Chamber of Secrets, like I don't know if this is my favorite Lord of the Rings movie, but there's a good hour and 20 minutes of it that are maybe my favorite consecutive hour and 20 minutes of any Lord of the Rings movie, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
absolutely. What is the hour and 20 from what to what?
Basically from when they start sieging the city
Okay.
to when the ring drops into the fires of Mount
Fires
Doom or
Mount
whatever.
Doom. Yeah, yeah, no, that tracks. I think my
It
I
reminds me a lot of the last battle. That's
yeah,
what I would say.
ooh,
Where
yeah, good, nice, good plug.
there's been so much setup to get me to this point, and so maybe this singular book isn't as good as any of the other books, or this singular movie isn't as good as any of the other movies. But all of the legwork you did to get me to this last like climactic thing, like the
Yeah,
climactic thing is gonna be so sweet.
like the battle is gonna hit.
Yeah.
And it absolutely hits. And especially like the most important thing of all is, Frodo and Sam finally getting there. Like that has to hit too. And I can't think of a more thrilling storyline for them in this movie. Like from them scaling those steps that are definitely not steps. That's like a sheer cliff they're scaling. All the way up to fighting Shelob, all the way through everything in Mount Doom is
I'd
just
say more of a ladder, yeah, if
yeah,
I'm
more
being
of a lot. Like some of that stuff they're climbing, I was like, dude, like no way. Like I'm not. Those aren't stairs. Like get the fuck out of here. I'm not climbing that.
yeah.
Yeah. Even when I like one of my favorite scenes is when Gollum plants the elven bread on
The
Sam,
breadcrumbs.
the breadcrumbs, and like you just see them sleeping on the edge of this like precipice. And I'm like, dude, I would roll off in the middle, like in the middle of the night sleeping. I'd roll right
Yep.
off the
I
side of
would
that cliff.
never trust sleeping on that thing, dude. We're way too comfortable. That's what I learned.
I wouldn't get a lick of sleep there because I'd be like, I'm just gonna roll off in the middle of the night to my death.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely wild. And yeah, I do have one gripe about Sam and Frodo in this
Uh,
movie.
let's hear
And
it.
it's really more about one of them in particular. I love all the stuff you were talking about. I found it incredibly disappointing that Frodo decides to keep the ring.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Because
He never at any point literally decides to destroy it. You know what I mean? Like, you could argue that his whole journey over these three movies has been to destroy it. You know, like he decided at some point that that's what he was going to do. But at no point when he's in Mount Doom does he actually let go. And that bothers me. I really need him to make that choice, you know?
no, I'm with you on that too. Because it's kind of taken away from him by him deciding like I'm gonna keep it, and then it's more just like him and Gollum, like tussle, and it just happens to fall in there.
Yeah, I mean, and it takes away from all the things Sam did too for me, you know? Where
Sam, the absolute OG in this movie,
right.
like
Sam, Sam, I'm just saying, Sam probably should have took that shit. I'm just saying.
yeah,
Like,
like
that's what I learned at the end. When
yeah,
Frodo says he's keeping it, I'm like, man, Sam, why did you trust this guy? You should have taken the ring from this motherfucker. You were right, you know?
Sam, everybody in their lives should have a Sam in their life. Like, I'm not gay, but after everything Sam did for me, if I was Frodo, I would have been like, you're not going for Rosie, bro. Like, you and me together for the rest of our lives. Like,
Yeah. I just want you to know, if Sam gets you to that, like, precipice, and you don't decide to destroy the ring, you don't deserve him, bro.
bro, if I was
You
Sam,
don't deserve him.
I would have pushed him in.
You know,
Like, you don't want to drop
exactly.
it? You're going in with it.
You don't deserve him because he believed in you. He did everything in his power and beyond to get you to that point. All you had to do was let go of the ring, man. That's it. That's all you had to
Yeah.
do.
Let us be done with it. I can't carry the ring, but I can carry.
Yeah. Just amazing, yeah.
Like one of the
Um,
greatest lines. And like the just the immaculate lines of dialogue in this movie. Like that line gets me every time. And I can think of no sicker line in history than when the Witch King is like, "No man can kill me," and Aomir's just like, "I am no man," and just
Yeah,
like
it's pretty great.
stabs him in the face.
It's
Like,
pretty great.
dude, this movie's
Although
so
I don't
sick.
know, it might be a little woke.
Yeah, no, if they made that movie, if they made that scene today, dude, everyone would hate it.
People would lose
There
their
would be
minds.
YouTube videos for decades about that
Yeah,
scene.
for real. Generations would just literally hate The Lord of the Rings.
They would fucking implode. You're telling me a woman had the tenacity to stab the Witch King and the most literally powerful man of all time? Like, it's like,
I
dude,
bet you he
shut.
runs a way better 40 than she does.
They're like, dude, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Amazing. But this is like I was questioning, we put that question in the air last week. Would this be the trifecta? Would we go for the hat trick with the perfect fives across the board? And I always said that this was the one movie that I liked the least, so I was curious, going around this time. And man, it was just hard to find fault anywhere
Yeah,
in
I
this
know.
movie.
That's what I was trying to tell you, dude. I was like, there's
Like,
no way it's not
like
like it's
it's so good. And I don't know that I agree with like a lot of the one-star people and the complainers that say that the endings take forever. Like I think the ending takes exactly as long as it needs to be to put the cap in this tale.
I don't disagree that it's a teeny bit long-winded, you know? Like, I think just based on the fact that we couldn't even tell you what it is, like maybe we didn't need the whole getting on the boat thing. Nah.
Well, I
Like,
mean, what I would say to that is I don't know that necessarily we don't need that as much as maybe we needed a bit more exposition in earlier movies about what the fuck that even is.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I think I have a pretty solid theory based on the exposition they did give us. So I would argue they gave us plenty. But
Oh yeah, well yeah, because I guess they don't want to give you a definitive answer as to whether or not he's truly dying or if he's just going on to the next adventure that can't be in Middle Earth anymore.
yeah, but this is a question I feel like I want to start asking more on the show.
He's yeah.
For you personally, what's different about this movie if that's just not there, you know?
Well, if he doesn't, well then so like it just ends with him
Like, all right,
staying there and having
stay
written the
with me for a
book.
second.
Okay,
Stay with me
okay.
for a
All
second.
right, all right. I'm here. I'm here.
Frodo wakes up in bed and they do the like Harry Potter epilogue level of like, hey, guess who's gonna walk in the room now?
Oh my God.
Like,
Yeah, no,
and
please,
then
please don't do that.
no, 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 that's still in the movie, right? That's in the movie, and we're at that part. And Samwise fucking Gamgee walks through the gateway of that room, and him and Frodo make eye contact. Roll credits. What's different? Like, what else do I need?
It's fair. Or I guess like if there was anything to do there is to maybe just finish it with him putting the feather in the cap on the book that he wrote. Like, and as he closes the book, like
Yeah,
that's
because
it.
that's the part I care about here in hour 14 of this trilogy of movies. I really need that to get me over the top.
Is that he finished the Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
along with
I
Bilbo's
just
tale.
need the last thing I need, and I'm like I feel pretty strongly about this right now. I
Mm.
need Frodo to look at Sam, and I need for both of them to understand that everything that went on in Mount Doom was pretty crazy, but we made it through, and we're boys. That's all I need. Like,
Do they kiss?
I mean, up to you. You take your pick. I don't care, one way or the other.
I mean, after everything they went through, to not even at least get like one kiss is feels like a cop out.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Sam
not
said
wrong.
some pretty suggestive things throughout that movie to him.
Yeah. But no, I just that's the last thing I need. I don't anything that happens after that. I kind of agree with some of those one-star reviews where it's like, well, I could take or leave it, you know?
It's fair. It's fair. Um, but I think for the most part, everything fires on all cylinders in this movie. From every character, we didn't touch on everybody, but not everyone needs as much of a dive in as the big main points. Because I mean, like Legolas and Gimli are there just for comedic relief throughout the entire movie.
Yeah,
I do one of my favorite things is I always just love Gandalf's like sassiness to Merry, not Merry, Pippin throughout like all of these movies. Like it's so funny that like it just seems like he just has to put up with Pippin unless that like he actually enjoys this guy as a person.
yeah. I mean, none of them were invited, right?
Yeah.
They
Like
just decided to go along.
like when Pippin touches like what's it Saruman's like orb and he sees everything and Gandalf's like losing his shit. He's like, "What'd you tell him? What'd you tell him?" And then he's like, "Bad news." Is like Pippin touched the orb. Like good news. Pippin doesn't know shit. So the guy doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
So it's just like masterful.
I have one more maybe wrap up question. I'm assuming you've seen the extended version of this movie, right?
Yeah, it's not for a minute. So if you're gonna ask me like, is there any difference that like I
No,
think
not. I
should be in
mean,
there? I couldn't tell
there's a
you.
there's a pretty glaring difference in the very beginning.
Okay.
Which, do you remember? I feel like I can't talk about this movie without talking about the absolutely absurd Saruman death scene that happens in the
Oh
extended
yeah,
version.
yeah. They cut that entire thing where he falls off the tower and just like impales himself
Yeah,
on the wheel.
it's like 15 minutes long, it feels like, and it's so silly. Like the
Yeah.
dialogue in it is so silly.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Wow. Yeah, that's hilarious. That was probably a good cut on their part.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I
That's
think
honestly the only reason I bring it up is because the other movies, I can't really tell the difference, so I kind of just always put on the extended version. Return of the King specifically, though, I'm like, I'm not watching that fucking Saruman that scene again. Like, no way. I refuse.
yeah, dude, I totally forgot about that. That is so funny. Yeah, and isn't like the extended edition of Return of the King like 5 hours?
I don't know if it's five. I think they're both on HBO Max, and
It's like
it's
four
over
and a half,
4 hours,
I think.
though. It's
Yeah,
like 4 hours plus, like at
yeah,
least another like 10 minutes.
yeah. It's a lot. I couldn't do it on this time. I had to go with the theatricals just for to coincide with our theatrical experience. So we had to stick there. Anything else you feel you need to touch on that we haven't touched on?
Nah, I
I
think
think
that's
this
about
is
it.
yeah, I think there's not much else you could say on such a masterpiece as this. Uh all right, I'm curious. I mean, it's interesting we're finally going to get once again another good awards contentions.
Yeah, and it's nice when we get movies like this because then I don't have to spend like a lot of time scrolling through a bunch of awards we've never heard of or trying to hype up the Teen Choice Awards.
We can just talk about the immaculate 11 for 11 wins that this movie went for at the Academy Awards. Tied
Yeah, I
itself
mean,
with Titanic and Ben-Hur for the most decorated movie of all time.
right. And so I mean it wins all of them, right? It wins Best Picture, it wins Best Director, which are like always the two like big ones.
It's interesting
Uh,
too that for these always with these big movies that went 11 for 11, they don't really ever get acting noms. Like this movie won 11 wins, 11 noms. I don't think any of them were for or none of them were for acting.
yeah, well, let's maybe that's an interesting thing we can dig into a little bit, right? Um, let's go to these specific Academy Awards. So we said it wins Best Picture, it wins Best Director, right? What I am curious to see, who is nominated and wins those acting awards, and would you give it to anybody?
Lord of the Rings.
So hold on, 2004.
Let us find out. Lord of the Rings is still to this day the only fantasy film to win Best Picture. I think also the only fantasy film to be nominated. Actually, do they count? Would you count Shape of Water as a fantasy film or a sci-fi film?
Uh, I mean, I think you'd have to call it sci-fi, but it's like one of those movies where it feels a lot like why people always group fantasy and sci-fi into one
One
category.
thing, yeah,
You know what I mean?
a
Like,
lot of similarities.
I would say it's sci-fi, but specifically because it's set in the 50s, which feels like a very sci-fi thing to do and not a very fantasy thing to
See
do.
thing
You
to
know what I
do.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I feel that.
Um,
This is also only the second trilogy to sweep best visual effects for all of its entries after the original Star Wars. And I think it's the
interesting.
the last trilogy to do that. I don't think any other trilogy since then has done that.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty impressive. Yeah. All right, do we want to talk about Best Actor?
Yeah, yeah. Let's hear it. Let's
And we'll
let me
get
hear.
back to all the awards that this movie won. It's plenty. And you're talking about all the cool records it set. Best Actor, there's a couple of like things I think you might be able to pick off here.
That,
The eventual winner is Sean Penn for Mystic River,
that tracks, dude. He's pretty fucking phenomenal in that movie.
which yeah, I wouldn't take that away from him. Ben Kingsley is nominated for House of Sand and Fog, which is a movie I will admit I have never seen.
I've never seen that either. But Ben Kingsley's the man. I'm sure he earned it.
Jude Law was nominated for Cold Mountain.
Yeah. All right.
And now I think we're going to get a little bit interesting here.
Okay.
This is a movie I have never seen, but this name strikes me as, let's say, interesting.
Okay.
Bill Murray is nominated for Lost in Translation.
Of course, he got nominated for that. Did they? The Academy like loved that movie. They had a hard on for that movie.
Yeah. So I mean that one's interesting to me because when I see the name Bill Murray, my first thought is no fucking way. Like, no, there's no way that you couldn't have put somebody from Lord of the Rings in there instead of Bill Murray. I don't buy it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, me personally, I've only seen Lost in Translation once, way back in the day, and I was not a fan of it. But also, like, I was like 14, 15, so maybe I didn't have the
yeah.
emotional maturity to appreciate that movie.
I think even at the time I realized that was not a movie for teenage boys.
Yeah,
That was not their target audience.
yeah. So I'd have to maybe give that one a rewatch before I could say definitively whether or not he deserves to be there, and maybe put like a Viggo Mortensen or somebody else there.
Yeah. And then this one's
Actually,
a
I mean,
little
I
bit more.
to before you dive into that, to be fair, I think the only performance I would nominate from Lord of the Rings would be Sean Astin.
I kind of agree. Yeah, I was gonna get to there, but the other, let's talk about that when we get to supporting actor, because I
Okay.
think we'll probably be able to pick off a few people there with Sean Astin.
Okay.
But this is an interesting one in Best Actor, just because it's similar to me in terms of vibe. But I do think that this person's performance is probably a little bit better. Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl.
He was nominated too.
Yeah, he's
Wow.
nominated, which like
I mean, that
it's
makes sense.
similar to me
His
because they're kind of like more box office fare than they
Yeah,
are like Oscar movies.
yeah. But that's a
But
really
Johnny Depp just crushes it in that
yeah,
movie,
that's
right?
a really good standout performance that like you'd be dumb not to acknowledge it in some way.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring up Best Actress, but only because I think this is maybe another fair critique of Lord of the Rings.
As
Who is the leading lady in this movie?
I would argue that there is no leading
There
lady.
isn't one, right? It's like,
Ga- I think Galadriel has maybe 10 minutes of screen time throughout all three movies.
yeah, yeah.
Eowyn probably has like the most in two and three, but even that is barely anything. And Liv Tyler shows up for like two scenes.
Right. That was another thing that blew me away about this, by the way. I was like, man, wasn't Liv Tyler like a bigger part of this movie?
It's like,
She's not in
nope.
it at all. She
Yeah.
shows up
Like
at the
I
very
don't
end.
I don't even think if you put together all three women's screen time together, is that enough time to give a best supporting actress nom? Like
Right, right, right.
that's how
So it's
little
just
women
a
there are in this movie.
it's not something I've ever really thought about until this exact moment when I was like, well, who would maybe be nominated for Best Actress? And I was like, oh wait, there isn't anyone.
Yeah,
Like
none.
there's not a woman in this movie that's like
Nobody.
plays any important role whatsoever.
Nope.
So Best Supporting Actor. I think there's going to be a lot of Sean Astin love here.
A lot of wiggle room. Let's hear them.
Alec Baldwin gets nominated for The Cooler. Have you ever seen that movie?
Never seen it. It's with
You
like
know what
William
it
H.
is?
Macy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. William H.
Yeah, yeah,
Macy plays
yeah.
like it's like a concept at casinos. A cooler is like he's just bad luck, and whenever somebody's doing good at a table, they're just like William H. Macy, like go stand over there.
Yeah.
Like,
So silly.
that's what a cooler is. But there's like like the movie has like drama, and there's like there's like crime parts of it.
Interesting.
It's a pretty good movie. I haven't seen it in a while. I think I'm gonna go watch it again now that I just looked at this. But dude, Sean Astin over Alec Baldwin. I don't even need to see it to pick Sean Astin, right?
All day. All day.
Do you know the movie 21 Grams?
I've heard of it. I saw it once, like way back in the day.
I don't
Um,
think I've ever seen
was
this.
not a big fan of it. I think it's
And it,
like Naomi Watts. I forget who else is in it.
Sean
It's
Penn,
it's one
but you
oh
got
Sean
Naomi
Penn.
Watts, yeah.
There we go.
And
It's one
Benicio del
of
Toro gets nominated for Best
there we go.
Supporting.
It's directed by one of the Spanish filmmakers. I don't think it's Alfonso Cuarón. It might be the one that did Birdman, and I can't remember his name at the moment.
Uh,
Alexander something, I think
give
it
me,
is, or
give me,
Alejandro
give me a
something.
little bit of a break because I'm from Long Island. Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu?
Yeah, there we go, there we go.
Inarritu?
God, that Long Island
Yeah,
accent
which
just
that just by like at a look, that's definitely the guy who directed Birdman. Yeah.
yeah, that Long Island accent just pronounces that just beautifully. I think
I
that
mean, I
was.
really turned it off. If I was going for it, I'd be like Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Um, God, man, they just do not like simple people from Long Island. This guy's the guy. He's the guy from Blood Diamond.
Oh, Yaman Hunso.
Sure. Yep. Yaman. Yep. I'll take it. That's good. That's good. Somebody knows how to pronounce it. Yaman
When
Hunso.
I was a kid, when it was like the D and the J, I thought it was like Digimon. It's like
Yeah.
Digimon. I was like, oh, swing and a miss there.
Yeah. But you had like a U sound in there, and it's like I, as a person from Long Island, I have nowhere to pull a U out of that name. Like. um, he gets nominated for In America.
Nice.
And then Ken Watanabe gets nominated for The Last Samurai.
Nice, dude. That's it. Ken Watanabe. Yeah, absolutely. Who won? If it wasn't Ken Watanabe, I don't want to hear it.
Oh, well, so I didn't even say the winner yet.
Oh, okay.
That's just everybody who is nominated. I gotta think that you could fit Sean Astin in here somewhere, but I probably
Definitely.
need to go back and watch these movies before I can really say definitively. And then the ultimate winner is Tim Robbins for Mystic River.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mystic River sweeped on those. Come on. You can do Ken Watanabe dirty like that?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
Bastards.
Um,
Not
but
even
yeah,
giving
so I mean,
Samwise a chance.
I think your point mostly stands, except for Sean Astin. It's like, who is the acting nominations? I don't really
Yeah,
know
yeah.
who
Like I
are.
wouldn't give anybody other than Sam a nomination if we
Um,
were giving him out for acting.
but let's go back to things it wins, right? Best adapted screenplay, best editing, art direction, set direction, best costume design, best makeup, best music original score, best music. Uh, it says it gets. Oh, okay, for the song Into the West, so it gets best song. Yeah. There's that Long Island accent. Best song.
Go get it in there.
Best sound mixing and best visual effects. So like this is like, and when you compare it to movies like Ben-Hur and what was the other one you said? Titanic was the other
Titanic.
one with this many wins.
Yep.
They're really just saying like, no, literally, this was the best picture. Like every way you can imagine that they make a movie, it did it the best. You know?
Like this just shined in all categories. Like
Right, and it
nothing
all
else.
combined to
Yeah.
make something spectacular.
Nothing else stood a chance. Like this is a masterpiece of the highest regard.
But
And
it's
we
interesting to me because this is also, I think, kind of a thing we see at the Oscars a bunch, which is the the Career Achievement Award.
yeah.
Because what is so much better about this movie with all of these categories than Two Towers or Fellowship of the Ring, right? What is?
It's more just like a hey, good job on this trilogy. We're giving you all the goods now. Like
Right. It feels like they were basically just saying, listen, we weren't going to give you 11 Oscars 3 years in a row,
yeah.
right? So, like,
That would just be insane. So take your 11
yeah, so
now.
here's your year. Great job with the
Yeah.
three movies.
This is for all three. Enjoy it. I get out of my sight.
And then
But
the
still,
other
and
thing I wanted to do
still
in
to this
IMDb deep
day,
dive.
still to this day, we have not seen a movie be as critically lauded uh, in nominations as that. Like, what do you think we'll get to that again? It's been a while. Do you think we'll get that again? You know, or a
It,
movie that could beat that possibly?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's kind of surprising to me that it hasn't happened since, although I couldn't tell you a movie that I
Because
would say should have.
well, we've definitely gotten movies that are like definitely epic in scale to the same level of like a Lord of the Rings, but the difference is that those movies, for whatever reason, don't end up being as they're not as critically lauded. Because it's like if
Right.
you're looking for just like spectacle, the same way that like Lord of the Rings and Titanic are these huge spectacles, Avengers Endgame is like one of the biggest spectacles to ever be
Yeah.
built. But that's a movie that didn't I like for whatever reason or another, like is not to the same level. I mean, obviously for some people it could be to the same level, but I think for,
Yeah.
but like us and same thing with critics is like you don't view those in the same regard, even though they're of the same like big style quality of movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to bring up because I don't know if I would say Endgame uh deserved any Oscars.
But no,
I would
I
say
don't think
like
it did either. But I just mean to the scale of like the Lord of the Rings and like terms of, what we're putting into this.
yeah. I mean, right, it's up there and it's also kind of similar in the sense that it's a big culmination of a much bigger thing, right? So it
Yeah.
is very plot heavy in the same way. And it does have those stretches where I'm like, yeah, this is pretty awesome, you know? It's interesting to me though because like I would even say like just the original Avengers is probably like a solid enough movie where it should get nominated for some things. I wouldn't say it should get nominated for 11 Oscars or anything like that, but no, I mean if Endgame is the biggest spectacle you could come up with, I don't think it's anywhere close to this movie. Like I don't think it's even like a competition.
No, I would agree with that there. It's just interesting that it's like even from that regard, it's like I don't see a world right now where we get a movie to come out that has the scale of like Lord of the Rings and Avengers, but also like the critically lauded like the Lord of the Rings to
Yeah,
get
and
us to get us to that promised land.
don't discount the career achievement award either because like if they only gave one of these movies a bunch of Oscars and there was only one of them, would it really have won 11? I'm not sure, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
it's
think
true.
that a lot of these technical awards, they're like, well, look, you've just been at such a high level so consistently over all three of these, like, boom, here you go, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So
I think it'll
we
happen
got.
eventually, though.
No, I think it will
I mean,
too.
I'm
But
sure people didn't think you could top Ben-Hur either, you know?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there's like Ben-Hur came out in like what was it, like the late '50s, early '60s, and then you
I
didn't
think it
have
was
any.
early 60s.
Yeah, and then nothing touched that until Titanic in 1997. So that's a huge gap. So like, it's not unreasonable to think that we're going to have another huge gap like that. If anything, it's
Yeah.
crazier that we had Titanic and then 4 years later, Lord of the Rings did it. Like that's the crazier thing.
Yes, agreed. I will say this. If there is ever a movie that is able to capture the art of rowing better than Ben-Hur does, I think it should be the one, you know, that gets 11 nominations and
Sure.
wins. I do.
Absolutely. I'm curious to ask you a question here, Jim.
Yeah.
How does this stack up in regards to endings of trilogies? Like,
I
do
mean,
you is this one of your favorite like third films in a trilogy, like endings,
yeah,
or
I
do
think
you have
I
one
think it
better?
off the top of my head, I think it is my favorite. And I'm curious to see if you have any contenders because I can't think of anything. And I mean, that's probably also recency bias because I just watched this movie like less than an hour ago.
Yeah, no, I think this one stands as the testament. I did pull up and I'm looking at, through like endings of trilogies just here and every single one I come up to while I do enjoy these ones, there's no way they touch. I think the only one that might come close, but I don't even know if you can really consider it like an actual third part of a trilogy because they're kind of like standalones that just feature the same character is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh yeah, that's tough to call a trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
that's
mean I
not
know a lot
yeah,
of people do, but it's
yeah,
not in the same way.
yeah. It's very loosely a trilogy.
It's a
Um,
trilogy in the sense that a guy is like, I'm gonna try and make this movie three times.
yeah,
It's not like a coordinated thing
yeah,
though. That's consistent between the three.
yeah.
Yeah.
The only other ones that I think would come close, but still wouldn't top it, would be Toy Story 3,
Okay.
uh, Before Midnight,
Before Midnight. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Before
Uh,
Midnight, my okay. All right, you're bringing some heat here. Okay,
oh, I'm
keep
bringing
going.
heat, Jim. I'm bringing heat. And then the last one would be the Last Crusade.
Um,
I'd still put Lord of the Rings above all those.
well, so the question is though, is it a movie you like best that's a third movie, or is it a movie you think is a best third movie of a thing? You know what I mean? Like, The Last Crusade might be the best third movie of a series. Like, if that makes sense. I don't know if I can really explain the distinction I'm making here. It's
No,
hard.
I think I track what you're saying. Like, you mean in the sense that like the third movie is the best of the third advent. Like, it's not so much that it's we're following one through story, just it's the third, like just the best movie in the franchise.
Yeah, well, okay. So here's what I would say.
Okay.
There's a big difference for me between The Last Crusade and Return of the King. And that's Return of the King is the ending of a coherent narrative that happens through three movies. The Last Crusade is just the third Indiana Jones movie. Does that make sense?
Was that not what I just said? I thought that's what I
I
was.
guess, yeah, I guess.
Did I not? I
Like,
guess I didn't explain that one properly. I thought that's what I was trying to get at.
yeah, maybe I missed you, man. Maybe we totally agree. Yeah, I
But yes, no,
apologize.
yeah, yes. I agree with you there. That is just in your
So,
sentiment. Not that I think The Last Crusade is the best one. I just agree with
yeah,
your
so
thought
I
your
would
thought process.
I would say that The Last Crusade is the best third Indiana Jones movie type movie. But the Lord, like Return of the King, in terms of finishing a narrative, is just it's so good, man. It's so good, and it fits the genre so perfectly. It's hard to beat.
No, for sure. I'm with you there. I do think it stands at the top of the heap. You'd be hard pressed to find a trilogy ending better than that.
Give me Before Midnight, though.
Give you Before Midnight. All right.
Yeah,
I give you
because
before.
before, I mean, it's hard to beat Before Midnight as the ending of a narrative between three movies, because those movies are all connected. And Before Midnight's like, yeah, you thought it was sweet when they got back together, huh?
Boy, were you wrong.
They got the happily ever after, and turns out not so happily and not so ever after.
I'm gonna tell you something, and I want you to hear me because it's important. All right, you're fucking nuts.
Yes, right. Before Midnight's like, hey, you come to the movies to escape reality? Well, I got bad news.
So
All we're
good.
doing is dishing out reality over here.
Oh my god, that's so funny. All right, do we have a deep dive, or are we putting a pin on this chunky meaty Billy?
I don't know. I was gonna maybe do Liv Tyler because it was just like I think it would be interesting to think about. Like it was something that stood out to me when I watched it this time, and maybe we don't need to do it. Maybe I just need to say this. I was like, man, remember when Liv Tyler was like big enough to be in movies like Lord of the Rings? Like whatever happened to that?
Oh yeah, that like late '90s, early 2000s, she was a thing for a spell.
Yeah, but she was in what our generation's version of Ben-Hur is, which is
Yeah,
not the same thing as being in Armageddon. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, no, no. It is crazy that it was like you were a part of like one of the biggest franchises that will ever be a thing.
Right. Yeah. It's just it was so funny. I was like, man, yeah, that's Liv Tyler, huh?
Yeah, it's so funny. But I mean, you could say that
uh,
about a lot of them too. Like you see like Elijah Wood now, and it's like, man, it's crazy. Like that was like his first like big thing. Like he was a child actor in like The Faculty and like well, they're like the Adventures of Huck Finn. Like he was in Back to the Future 3 as like that one random like kid.
yeah, he was in the big one that sticks out to me was wasn't he in The Good Son? Do you remember that movie?
No, I do not remember that movie.
Dude, you've never seen The Good Son?
I don't think so.
I think that's what it's called. Okay, hold on. We're not doing IMDb for Liv Tyler. We're just gonna look up if this is a movie. It's like Macaulay Culkin and I'm pretty sure it's Elijah Wood. And
Okay.
Macaulay Culkin is like an evil, yeah, the good son. Yep, here it is. I'll read you the Mark, who is played by Elijah Wood, a young boy who loses his mother, must stay with his extended family while his father is away on business. Mark becomes acquainted with his cousin Henry, Macaulay Culkin. However, the extent of Henry's depravity becomes clear when Mark sees him kill a neighbor's dog and intentionally create
Fuck.
a traffic pileup on the highway.
Fuck.
After a supposed mishap on an icy pond with Henry's sister Connie, Mark tries to reveal Henry's crimes before it's too late.
Dude.
Dude, you need to see The Good Son.
Yeah, I am
It's
absolutely going to be
amazing.
watching that. That sounds insane.
What year do you think this movie came out?
That's an absolute 90s movie, Jim. If I've ever heard one, like that screams like 1994 to me. Like,
Dude, 93. Yep, you nailed it. You basically nailed it. And I only bring up the year besides the fact that of course that movie came out in 1993. But just to like put into context how old Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood are in the movie I just described. They're like
uh,
nine.
yeah, like that's
Like
insane. Like you're putting all that acting gravitas on these 9-year-olds. Like,
right, right. And dude, I swear I haven't seen this in a while, but both of them just like knock it out of the park.
I'm
It's like the
sure
kind of thing that like maybe will never happen again because Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin are two of the best child actors ever, you know?
that's absolutely insane. I will be watching that immediately. As soon as we finish this, I'll be finding that.
Must watch. Must
Yeah,
watch.
absolutely, absolute must watch. That's incredible. But all right, cue my boy Raj up, Jim. Let's dive into our ratings here.
I'm Roger Ebert. In a scene from the best film of the decade. This is a great film.
You goddamn right it is, Raj. Um, do we have a thought on what Raj gave this movie?
I mean, I would be pretty shocked if it wasn't anything besides the four, the highest score he could give.
Ooh, he was right there. He gave it 3.5 out of 4.
Gasp. No
Yeah,
way,
such
Raj.
he writes such a crowning achievement, such a visionary use of all the tools of special effects, such a pure spectacle that it can be enjoyed even by those who have not seen the first two films. So how is that not a 4, Raj? But all
Yeah,
right.
so why is it not a four, Raj?
Yeah.
What did it do wrong?
Jeez, Raj. Fucking like what? Was it too long? You saw a bunch of were you one of the people that walked out that guy saw?
Raj is just a big Star Wars fan. He's like, if I give
Yeah.
this a four, then everybody will know it's better than Star Wars. I need to keep this buried.
God, we see right through you, Raj. All right, Jim, let's hear it. Are we rounding it out? What are you giving it?
Yeah, I'm giving it five, man, which I know we were a little bit nitpicky in this episode, but it's just like, it's a 5 out of 5 movie. I can't find anything to take points off for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. You know, this one used to not be a 5 for me, but I think that was just because I rode so high on the Two Towers that I just refused to see any of the other ones as good as the Two Towers. But, you know, watch doing it this time and you know how we've been diving into these movies and talking about it. This trilogy is perfect. Like it's just
Yeah.
immaculately done.
The real
So,
important question, if we're both giving it a five, where do you put these movies in order?
oof, I don't know. Well, we said we're not ranking our tenors, but it for me
Yeah, if this is
personally,
the end of a trilogy of movies, I think this is different.
gotcha. So for me personally, I would go. I still think my order wouldn't change. I'd still go Two Towers, Fellowship, Return of the King. What
I
about you?
can respect that opinion, but I will take them one, two, three.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Fellowship
That's
is
fair.
Fellowship is like usually in my top five, very regularly. It might be my favorite movie ever.
I could not fault you for it because that is a fantastic movie to have in your repertoire. But it joins two other illustrious movies that have also gotten a perfect 10 from us. It joins Titanic and Pirates: Curse of the Black Pearl, and rounding out our top tens. It's a pretty good top 5 there of perfect movies. I can't find fault in any of those. The question will be is what will be the next movie to join it?
Um,
You think
I
there'll
don't
be one
know.
anytime soon?
It's not going to be Terminator Salvation.
You're telling me Mick G can't make perfection?
Dude, okay. Since you brought it up, I'm gonna skip to my recommendation here.
Okay, let's hear it.
A movie that I did not realize was directed by McG. And
Okay.
probably every time I've seen it at the end, I was like, no way, this was directed by McG. But since we've been talking about him so much, I'm never gonna forget now. You remember the movie This
This
Means
means
War?
war. I knew that's what you were gonna say. I fucking knew it, dude.
I watched it the other day, and
Um,
I love that movie. It's
yeah, no,
very enjoyable. It's a very good movie.
that movie is so much more entertaining than it has any right being. Like it's
Yeah,
it's it's so enjoyable.
and it gave me a moment that since we've been talking about McGee on this show, I didn't think I was ever gonna get, where I was like, huh, maybe Hollywood was onto something with this McGee guy. Like
You're about to give
maybe they knew what was up.
you're gonna give McGee his flowers right now.
I mean, I don't know. Terminator Salvation and Full Throttle, pretty tough. But This Means War, I was kind of like, oh, maybe he just needed some more at bats.
He just needed some seasoning. He just needed to get comfortable with what he was doing. He got he got there. My God, that's a great recommendation. I remember when we watched that, and that movie was very enjoyable. My recommendation is going to be on the opposite side. Still a great movie, but I don't know if this is so much an enjoyable movie. As much as it is, I can't believe this movie exists. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. I had just come across it. It's a '70s movie with Al Pacino called Cruising. Uh,
No.
I don't know if you've ever heard, dude. This movie is fucking insane. So,
What is the cruising referring to?
uh,
Like what
so
is the
cru
title?
so cruising refers to them going out on the prowl trying to pick up gay men.
Okay, yeah. That's what I thought you were getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the movie, Al Pacino is like a rookie cop, and there's a serial killer murdering gay dudes in the '70s S&M leather bar scene.
Oh my God.
So the cops don't care to solve it because they're like, what do we care? Like gay people
Yeah,
killing
they're
each
like,
other? Like
let
we
those
don't, yeah,
guys die. Who
we
gives a
don't we
shit?
don't
Yeah.
give a fuck. So Al Pacino goes undercover in the scene to try and like snuff it out. And he's this like happy-go-lucky detective. He's like got a great life at home with a wife, but through going undercover here, starts to question his own sexuality
Oh my God, I
as
knew you were gonna
he
say that.
becomes more and more entrenched in the gay leather scene. One of the most insane movies I've ever watched.
Yeah,
I don't
that
think,
is bananas.
yeah,
That sounds like I'm
yeah.
so happy that it went where I thought it was gonna be going. That's
And it
amazing.
has absolute zero subtlety and tact when dealing with subject matter of this kind.
Yeah, well, how could the movie have any subtlety? I don't know about tact, but it can't be subtle. Like the whole point is he's
Yeah,
supposed to be like, "Wow, I never thought of it like this. This seems actually pretty cool." Like,
it is, it is, it's so nuts. I've seen a lot of movies, and it would take a lot for me to be shocked. And when I say shocked, not like, oh my God, like more shocked, like I can't believe this thing was made.
yeah,
But to find this gem in the like repertoire of '70s movies was just like, this movie is nuts.
yeah. The
Like
fact that you
I'm
said it
so
was made in
happy
the
it exists because
70s,
yeah, because it's crazy
yeah. The
and
fact that you
very
said it was made in the 70s makes me want to watch it even more because the 70s was like a very cool time for movies.
it's very audacious. It is very insane. And I could not recommend it enough. I'll leave you with one scene from the movie, Jim.
Okay, let's hear
Al
it.
Pacino goes into this bar, and he tells whenever someone comes up to try and score with him, he just goes, "No, no, my thing is I like to watch." And he watches a
Oh
dude
no.
fist another dude right there in the bar.
Wait a second. Hold on. You know what?
Yep,
Actually, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to leave that where it is, and
yep,
I'm probably going to go watch the movie. This is the
yeah,
answer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the movie.
How much,
Um,
like, I'm going to ask actually, how much could they possibly show of that on
they
camera?
so
There's
you
no way.
see you see one dude supine just laying on his back. Then there's another dude standing over him while three other dudes watch, and you just see the dude oiling up his arm. And then it cuts to the dude who's laying on his back, and he moans like the Dickens.
Okay, okay. Gotcha.
And then
So
in the
yeah, yeah, right,
background, you
right,
just
right.
see Al Pacino staring at him. So
That's
no
that's
subtlety there.
nuts. And yeah, and the takeaway is he's kind of like, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And from
that's
that,
so
Al
good.
Pacino decides, like, I think I could get down with this.
Yeah, that movie sounds nuts.
Yeah, it's fucking insane. And I can't recommend it enough. Um, now, are we taking a guess at next week? Do you want a hint at what we're diving into?
Yeah, sure, give me a hint.
Because you didn't hit on it in the box office. And that's because we didn't quite I didn't see any movies in January. But so we're diving back into the um, romantic comedy realm, and it stars an actor and an actress that work fairly often together in the romantic comedy realm.
Huh.
It's an actor that we are very much hit or miss on.
Hit or miss on.
Yeah, he does mostly comedic movies that we tend to hate as time goes on, but then does dramatic movies that we were like, you son of a bitch, you can do this all along.
Okay, those hints were kind of vague until the end there. So like the end there tells me it's got to be either Jim Carrey or I guess Adam Sandler, right? Because Uncut Gems like is
Yeah.
like in that dramatic like what the heck,
Yep.
which I think that's what you mean. But can I just say for a second that Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler is not that good in it. It's just like the perfect movie for Adam Sandler to be in, if that makes sense. like,
Like
like
it tailors to his strengths, which is like you if you want to be on a good brand, like that's a good move to make. Like if he
yeah,
could be
yeah.
doing stuff like that the whole time, like
But I'm also struggling to think because we always make fun of the dramatic roles Jim Carrey has done. Like, I think you could argue Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is good, but like usually when we bring up Jim Carrey's dramatic roles, we're like, man, did you see The Majestic? Me neither.
the number
Or
23,
like the number 23, right? So I'm gonna guess it's Adam Sandler.
you would
And
be correct.
then I'm gonna guess maybe Anger Management. Did we pass that one already? I don't
We
remember.
passed we passed that one already. That one was 2003. We're in two settled in 2004 now,
Okay, then give
and
me
it's
Mr. Deeds, final answer.
no,
I
you
don't
would
remember
also
what year that came out either, but it's
you
gotta
you
be
would
around that same time.
also be wrong. That would be way before. We're talking an actress that he works with often.
Oh, right, actress. Uh, oh, he did that movie Blended with Drew Barrymore, right? Is that
Well, that's not what Blended was like 2014, but you got the actress right.
what's the one he does with Drew Barrymore?
You're narrowing down the movies.
He
So
does
he
a
did,
bunch with Drew Barrymore though,
yeah.
right? What
So
are they
he did
called? There's
he
like a
did
series of
Blended. He did Blended. He did Wedding Singer, and then there's this last one.
them. Oh, it's got I mean for Drew Barrymore, 51st Dates.
Here you go. He got there eventually, folks. He got there.
Yeah.
Yes, 50 First Dates. We're diving back into the rom com realm, into 50 First Dates. So that'll be a an interesting one to go back into. We're taking a hard nosedive from
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings down to
Peter
50 First Dates,
to
but we're
Kids
kicking off
Earshot.
2004, and we are inching ever closer to the era when you and me would go to the movies every week. So we're inching closer and closer to that goal, and we're gonna get
We're
there.
inching closer to our next inevitable 10-star movie, Mean Girls.
Naturally, only a few short episodes away. But now we turn it over to you guys. Let us know down below how much you love the epic conclusion to The Lord of the Rings. And make sure you tune back here next week when we dive into 50 First Dates. And as always, we'll see you at the movies.